Hello, fiends, and welcome to the Monster Party Podcast, now a part of the Fangoria Podcast Network. For more information about the network, including other programs, how to follow the show, and find past episodes of Monster Party, please visit Fangoria.com. And now, it's party time. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special pinata-sized edition of Monster Party.
Monster Party! Monster Party! And this is going to be big. This is going to be huge.
Man, it is pinata-like. It's filled with candy of information
And I'm dying,
and snacks
yes,
of goodness.
and I'm dying to chew it. And who are you, sir?
I am Matt Weinhold.
I am SHAWN SHERIDAN.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James GONIS.
And we have a crazy topic.
We have a great topic. This topic is kind of an all-encompassing topic that definitely falls in the genre, kind of sci-fi, horror, action.
Oh, yeah.
All the things that make life worth living.
Yes, that's right. We're calling it That's Exploitation.
That's exploitation!
That is exploitation.
These are
Everything exploitation.
These are the movies that elicit strong reactions from
Yes.
audiences, shock value, attention-grabbing titles,
Sex,
and
sleaze,
content, grindhouse,
Sci-fi, voodoo,
42nd Street
cannibalism.
drive-ins.
Good Lord.
Basically my way.
Hey!
Stuff that's, on the fringe of the mainstream, stuff that may not be that respectable all the time, but
Yeah.
is definitely memorable.
But welcome in my home.
And Sean,
Right.
to help us, guide us through
along
all this
journey to
exploitation.
this wonderful world.
We are blessed.
We have actually two guests.
Two?
Can you believe it?
Two.
Our first one is, he is a incredibly prolific filmmaker.
Prolific.
Avid.
Like how prolific?
How many?
Like we're talking directing over 100 films.
Wow.
Dang.
Avid film buff.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Cinema scholar.
He is a writer,
sci-fi horror
producer.
fan. He's writer, editor.
He's done it all.
He's done it all.
He's PA'd?
Yes, he's done every
about
facet
catering?
of production.
Who is it, Sean?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David DeCOTEAU.
David DeCOTEAU! Woohoo!
Hello, welcome to Monster Party.
Yeah!
Be happier. The only podcast that feeds you.
Yes,
right.
yes,
That's right.
and
That's right.
get you cocktails too.
It gets
right.
me cocktails and gets us all warmed up.
Yeah.
That.
And
yeah.
if that weren't enough,
If-
though,
oh my
we
God,
also,
there's
also
more.
With,
There's more,
Along
Sean.
with David DeCOTEAU, we have another David. And this David is also a film scholar, an expert at cinema history. You've heard him on DVD commentaries. You've seen him interview stars from all eras.
He's interviewed celebrities.
Yes, he's entrenched in the genres that we love.
Oh, my
Ladies and
God.
gentlemen, David Del Valle.
David DeVal.
I embrace your microphone.
Yeah.
I worship this little tool that is in front of my mouth. As I love you all.
Oh, that's
Good
great. This is going to be
Boys to
awesome.
know that I've come from the valley. To love you all. Individually.
Awesome.
Two Davids.
thrilled.
Strap
David,
yourselves
No.
in,
We
folks.
both come from the depths of exploitation.
That's right. That's what
I
we love.
come here alone, but with David DeCOTEAU.
David Del
Give
Valle.
This is David versus David. here.
Yeah.
David
It
DeCOTEAU.
is a VV.
Now I want to get right into this. Now
Well,
I mean
do it.
seriously.
Now, David DeCOTEAU, I'd say you're one of the most well-known cult filmmakers. I mean, is that a title you would use a lot?
True. No, I love that, and I love the fact that people even know who the fuck I am because
Yeah.
Our crowd.
I started in this business in the 1980s, working for Roger Corman.
Yeah.
Wow.
And moved here after working in the movie theaters for many, many years, being an exhibitionist.
You were an exhibitionist?
That works.
I was
think
an
that says it all.
exhibitor
Oh, okay.
Right.
Exploitation.
who got into the exhibition business.
Okay.
And yes, that was the 80s. We remember the 80s. And and so it's great that people know who the heck I am. I hope they do. And it's been a good run so far. I started directing in
some of the,
86.
I want to mention just some of the titles because, like I said,
the
David
greatest.
has literally directed over 130 films. I think.
Correct.
As,
Not
right.
talk about all of them.
Well, a lot of people,
We're gonna list every
We
single
just
one.
might.
I mean, David, not everyone out there may know of all of David's
But
films.
I'd say like
Well,
a lot of the
but we can't
films.
possibly get into all of them tonight because they just go on and on.
Yes.
But a lot of the stuff like that I was exposed to in the 80s from Full Moon and Empire Films,
Right.
this is stuff that was always in the video shelves and just like beckoned you to rent them.
Right.
Stuff
God.
like Creepozoids,
How could you not rent Creepozoid?
Exactly.
Yes, it's impossible.
Dream Maniac, get that
That's
Dream
right.
Maniac. Of course, the classic sorority babes in the SLIMEBALL BOWL-O-RAMA,
That's correct.
based on a true story, I believe.
That's Faulkner, right?
It's better than the original, actually.
Human Capote.
And one of my single favorite Puppet Master film, which is Puppet Master 3:
Thank you.
Toulon's Revenge.
Thank
Great
you.
film, takes place in Nazi occupied
Germany, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's great.
Thank you.
Crazy, too.
That is my favorite too.
Wait.
Written by one of our past guests, C. Courtney Joyner.
Friend of the show.
Yeah.
Yes.
We love that guy.
Some other films from David, Shrieker, which is kind of like a gothic horror movie, Witch House, Nightmare Sisters,
Witch House.
Dr. Alien. You've also worked numerous times with what I'd like to say is kind of the holy triumvirate of 80s Scream Queens, which is Brink Stevens, Michelle Bauer, and Linnea Quigley.
Linnea Quigley.
You've worked with
I
them a
put
lot.
them in their first movie together. Actually.
No, I didn't know that.
That was their first movie, Sorority Babes and the SLIMEBALL BOWL-O-RAMA. I put them in their first
Wow.
movie together.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then I reunited them 25 years later for 1313 Cougar Cult.
Nice. Nice
It's in
title.
my queue.
Now, Dave, I want to ask
May
you.
save my marriage.
Now, David, for you growing up, were you just immediately drawn to kind of sci-fi, horror, exploitation stuff? Like, what kind of got you into this stuff?
Well, of course, as a young man, I fell in love with the movies, just like all of us did.
Yeah.
And I come from a very humble beginnings in Portland, Oregon, with a father who was a gravel plant foreman, who basically was the sweetest man on the earth, and who supported everything I wanted in my life. And he felt that since I had a passion for something, he should support it.
That's great.
Because there's a lot of kids out there that don't have a passion for something.
And that's
Sure.
something that is a common denominator with all of us is that we all had parents who let us like all this stuff.
It's
you know?
all about parenting.
yeah,
It really is. And so I, saw Night of the Living Dead on television, uncut, when I was like 9 or 10 years old at midnight. And I realized that movies could be very scary.
Yeah.
And then I saw the trailer for Beyond the Door on TV.
Oh, that's a great scary
freaked
trailer.
And then I realized that movies could be really fucking scary.
Right.
So much so that the trailer said, "Don't see this movie. It's too fucking scary."
Which automatically makes you want to see the
Exactly.
film. Right.
And then I got into disaster movies. I loved the
Cool, like the
Towering
70s.
Inferno
Oh, yeah.
and the earthquakes and that. And then one day I couldn't get in to see Jaws because it was sold out. So I walked down the corridor of my quad theater, the Southgate in Milwaukee, Oregon, and I went to see a film called Crazy Mama.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy
Yeah.
mom.
Directed by Jonathan Demme and
Right.
produced by some guy named Roger Corman, released by a company called New World Pictures. And I sat there and this movie was sort of unleashed on me. And I said, my God, if movies are as fun to make as they are to watch, I'm going to try to do this.
Talk about exploitation. That's a great prime example.
And I wrote a letter to Roger Corman at New World Pictures.
Really? Just like
I
wrote
did.
a letter and put it in the mail.
I did. And his assistant, Gail Ann Hurd, wrote me a letter back and said, we rarely get fan letters for our boss, but thank you very much. Roger was very impressed. Here's a press book for our new movie, Eat My Dust. So, which he signed. And then Eat My Dust opened. And then, of course, movies change because all movies should be judged against Eat My Dust. Because it truly is the greatest movie ever made.
It is a really fun movie.
And a lot of fun to watch, and a lot of fun to watch again and again and again. And I kept in contact, and I said I'm going to come to Los Angeles for a a little vacay, and they set up a nice meeting for me to meet Roger.
Wow.
And I did for 2 hours, and he was lovely. And he said, if you ever move to Hollywood, swear to God, if you ever move to Hollywood, there's a job here for you.
Really?
This is like the
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
It is truly getting the golden ticket, because I talked so lovingly about Grand Theft Auto and Eat My Dust and Humanoids from the Deep. And these kind of
classic.
films.
I love that movie.
And I got my full-on boner when I saw Battle Beyond the Stars, because because
we all love that one.
I was a projectionist by this point at the movie theater. So I got to study the end credits of a film. As a projectionist, you see the beginning and you see the end.
right.
And so I studied all the end credits for Battle Beyond the Stars. So when I went down to Los Angeles and met with Roger and everything, he hired me eventually when I finally moved down there. I would walk into the studio, which he had a studio in Venice, California.
Yeah.
And I would walk into the editing room, and the assistant editor would say, "Oh, hi, I'm Clark Henderson." And I go, "Oh, craft service, Battle Beyond the Stars."
Oh my gosh.
You could have knocked him over with a feather.
Oh my gosh. That's
And
awesome.
so I immediately ingratiated myself at 18 years old with all of these amazing people. And they said, the head of the studio, I think it was at that point, I think it might have been Charles Scurris, whose grandfather ran 20th Century Fox back in the Cleopatra days. Part of the Scurris dynasty. He said, you know, you seem to be pretty good at, everybody seems to like you. Why don't we just put you on payroll at $175 a week? And they actually had a paying job there. It wasn't this little one. And so I was on staff there, and they said, oh, by the way, we're just finishing up the special effects for this movie called Escape from New York. Now, what Roger had done, Roger had created a studio in Venice that also had a very, very, very amazing special effects department.
Yeah.
So they were doing special effects for not just New World stuff. They were
Exactly.
just-
They
okay.
dropped it out. They would do commercials and little movies here and there. And so they had to do some pickup shots. And Roger said, why don't you come down to the studio and do your pickup shots? So on that movie, I got to meet Kurt Russell and John Carpenter and Dean Cundy and Deborah Hill and these people. And it was a great experience. One night, and I ended up doing a little sort of featurette for the Escape from New York Blu-ray that just came out.
awesome.
About my night on the... It was a great night because, you know, no matter how much I loved Eat My Dust, Halloween changed the world.
It did.
Yes, it
it really did.
And
Jamie Lee.
It was kind of like the Blair Witch of its time. and it changed filmmaking.
It was completely unexpected. Now, this is
Right.
before the internet, before PR, before anything. So when you went to a premiere of a movie called Halloween, it didn't have much fanfare. It was a small distributor.
Right.
We sat there, and I've never seen an audience scream louder or more often in my life, to this day. And I said, this John Carpenter guy is a fucking genius. So when I got to meet him, I said, you know, this is your movie. It's just incredible. He was trying to get through Escape from New York. It was a very ambitious movie for him. But I got to meet him, and I worked on Gail Ann Hurd's first producing job, Smokey Bites the Dust, with Jimmy McNichol. And so I was, but they set me in every department. And I remember I was working for the casting director for Galaxy of Terror, a woman named Virginia Chase, who was Martin Scorsese's old girlfriend. She had cast Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore and Taxi Driver, and she was working at Rogers Studio. And so I said, you know, do you need an assistant? She says, I need somebody who can type 30 words a minute. And I didn't know how to type it. I said, sure, I can type 30 words.
That's what you do, right?
And so she kind of liked me. I kind of liked her. And then I remember one of the Carpenters, who was a young actor, would come up to me and say, you know, Dave, is there any way I can get an audition for Galaxy of Terror? And the Carpenter was
Harrison
Bill
Ford.
Paxton.
Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton, who was best friends with James Cameron, who was also working there, who was the art director for the movie.
Right.
So it was an amazing, and we cast Zalman King, and Robert Englund was in it, and a bunch of people. So it was
great cast.
It was a really great sort of. I mean, this was like 4 or 5 months.
What was
Yeah.
Paxton like back
Yeah.
then?
Paxton was, first of all, incredibly beautiful. He was so handsome, and he had worked on the movie. He worked on the movie Carrie as an art department assistant. Is
that right?
So I asked him a lot about that. That was his very first job. He was very tight with Jack Fisk, the art director on that, who was Sissy Spacek's husband, I think.
Yeah.
And we talked about that. He was just so beautiful and everything. And I said, sure, come on in an audition. They didn't cast him or anything. But, you know, he and Jim, Jim was very loyal. Jim Cameron.
Yeah.
Very loyal. Jim Cameron's a very interesting guy because he's the most opinionated person on planet Earth, but he's always right. So you just sort of
Kinda worked out for him.
Yeah, it's just kind of like deal with it because he was always right.
I'd heard on Galaxy of Terror, like he kind of took over, like the art.
he did.
I mean, like he wasn't even really it wasn't really his position really, but he just kind of started ordering people around.
It was like
And Battle Beyond the Stars.
Battle Beyond the Stars. That's what I heard too.
Well, it was like Charlton Heston in Planet of the Apes. Give me a month, I'll be running this planet. And about a week, he was running the planet. And so whenever Roger would show up in his Lotus Esprit,
Really? Awesome.
he would go right to James Cameron's office because James was the creative visionary of this company at this point.
Wow.
And and Roger's Corman's car, his fashionable license plate was on Sked.
Nice.
Which I thought, oh, till the day he dies.
And was that always true?
Yeah.
Oh,
He's not dead yet, though. Exactly. But anyway, so it was a great experience working for him. And then they kind of slowed down. We did some shooting for Forbidden World and some things like that. And then it kind of got... And I kind of got to the point where after 4 or 5 months, I said, give me a month, I'll be directing a movie.
Right.
And so I didn't. But I went to work as a PA for people. There was the production coordinator of Roller Boogie. He said, oh, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but Battle Beyond the Stars and Roller Boogie had the same extras.
No.
Yes.
Oh my God.
No, I did not know
They
that.
shot a block away from each other. You know, Rogers Studios in Venice.
Yeah.
It's a block away from they shot Roller Boogie. So if you look at the Roller Boogie extras and the Battle Beyond the Stars, they're like the guys with curly hair. It's the same dudes.
Oh my!
Same people.
Same roller skates.
Same everything.
I can't tell you how many times I've watched Roller Boogie too.
I believe that.
Are you kidding me?
No,
That's
no.
a
That's like
hilarious
going to
movie.
church for me. There's Roller Boogie and then there's everything else.
There's like before and then after. It's
right.
Exactly.
BCAD.
Yes, exactly.
I haven't seen Roller Boogie.
Well, you've seen it. You've seen it.
Let's do it now.
David, you haven't lived. You haven't lived
Until you've seen Roller Boogie.
No, I
You've
have
seen
lived.
it. You've seen it.
I've lived.
Yeah. He is Roller Boogie. But anyway, so I went right from there, and the production coordinator for Roller Boogie became the production coordinator on the new Wim Wenders movie called The State of Things.
Wow.
Okay.
Now that's the one with Sam Fuller and Alan Gorwitz and
That's a
everything.
serious
Yeah.
movie.
Now you thought Roller Boogie was low budget. Wait till you work for Wim Wenders.
Really?
Oh yeah, they had a nickel, and it was like
The
7
Deutsche
people.
Mark.
Yeah, it was like a 7 people, and it was like a one camera, and it was like
Jeez.
So I worked on that, and it was an experience to say the least.
Right.
Wim Wenders would sit at the Tropicana Hotel and watch watch all game shows, but turn the color off and watch it in black and white. Very strange man. That's how they do it over there, I guess.
Fucking Artours.
But no, that was great. And then I, after that, I worked for a number of other people, and I kind of made my segue from Venice into the Valley.
Oh, okay.
And in the Valley is where the real money was made.
I see.
Exactly. And I became a very, very prolific director of love stories.
Okay.
We're familiar with those.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I directed my first movie, my first love story when I was 21 years old. After working on the crew of many, many movies, and there was a producer who I'm friends with to this day, one of the greatest men I've ever met in my life, named Terry LeGrand. And I worked with Terry as a grip and lighting, and I wrote a script, and I said, can I direct this? I can do it in 2 days. Let me direct it.
2 days?
Yeah, it was a love story.
Okay. Right.
So,
It's a big budget movie.
Yeah, but 2 days. Wow.
So he let me direct it, and I would start directing when I was 21, and I directed for 3 years. I did about 40 love stories, and raised some money. And I said it's time to make the sideways move,
The big jump.
not jump up.
You're going to kind of do a side
Sideways
step.
move to horror
A different area of
A
exploitation.
different kind of
a
love.
different type of a more
It's
it's different kind of
it's
love.
like it's a horror.
So, I raised the money based on directing these movies where they were paying me $2,000 a day to direct.
Wow.
I said, okay, and at 21, that was a lot of money in
Sure.
1983. And so I took that money and I raised, I decided to do a horror picture, and which was you have to understand, at that point, VHS had just exploded. There was about 30,000 video stores out there.
The date we were talking about is like 1983.
That was the epicenter because that was the first CES in Vegas. and we all went out there for the love story business.
Yeah.
And out there, you were selling VHS for $80.
Yeah, they were really expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
CES
And-
being the Consumer Electronics Show.
Exactly.
Right.
They had in the Aladdin, they had a special love story section.
Right.
And you couldn't get it. It was standing room only.
Really?
Because all the girls were there.
Because
Standing room only at the Aladdin.
At the Aladdin.
That's what you had going for you, honey.
Yes, we did.
This is fabulous. I
Fabulous.
can't. This
Yeah.
is, you know
Anyway,
what?
so the Aladdin. Okay, calm
Kudos,
down.
honey.
Calm down. Anyway, so the minute I start talking love stories, he gets all excited.
yeah, we get that.
So anyway, so I did. But what was great about the love story business is I got to meet every motion picture lab technician in Los Angeles,
Right.
sales
Right.
department. I got to meet every negative cutter. I got to meet
Sure.
every post sound house. I literally met everybody in a position of all the vendors.
Yes.
This is the film days when you made movies on film.
Totally
Right,
understand.
right.
Yeah.
And so you got to meet all these people. So when I decided to, I've had enough money to make a horror picture, I went to all those same people and they all gave me the greatest deal in the world. So they were all very supportive of me.
Right.
To make the transition, not moving up, but
Right.
moving
Sideways.
sideways. And so it was great. And so but the weirdest thing is that the writer of the film was a woman. Was the wife of a producing friend of mine who was Roger Corman's assistant at the time. And he said, why don't you have my wife write it? She'll write it for a nickel. And she did. But she was also classmates with a woman who ended up being the development executive at Empire Pictures. So she wrote this script for me. I was in pre-production, but she used the script as a writing sample to send to Empire, which she did. And then
Which was just exploding then, right?
and huge.
that
I mean, you
was-
couldn't make enough movies back then.
Really? It really
an
was that
incredible
time where
era.
the need for
hasn't
product,
changed.
right?
This is before the studios released their libraries on VHS.
Yeah.
So they had to
That's
be
right.
new movies.
Right,
Right.
right.
Because the studio said this is all going to die out in a year. Why
Right.
give up? Why risk piracy and all of that?
Right.
Anyway, so this writing sample went over very well at Empire, and they said, "Well, we'd like to buy this script." And they said, "Well, it's too late. It's being directed and produced by David DeCOTEAU, and he starts shooting on Monday." And they said, Deborah Dion, who was the executive, who had been her classmate, the writer's classmate, said, "Well, we'd like to meet this David DeCOTEAU." So I went over. I lived 2 blocks from Empire Pictures at the time, right off Hollywood Boulevard. Hollywood Boulevard was the 42nd Street of LA. We had all the
Right.
B movies. It was all first run. You see
Right.
movies like Pieces or Funeral Home at the El Capitan. It was like, really? So
Why do they ever try to clean it up?
I know. I hate that. So I met with them, and Charlie Band walked in and said, "I hear you're making a movie. We're partners now." And I said, "Make me an offer I can't refuse." And he did, and we became partners. And I just had lunch with him today. He's one of my best friends. So
Really?
I directed 30 films for him over these years, many years. And it was a nice start. But as I tell everybody, my 3 favorite letters are VHS. Because that's what I mean. I just got lucky.
You were
really
at the,
lucky.
you were right at that time.
Right at
when
the
it was-
explosion of VHS,
Right.
when it was a real business. Run 30,000 video stores times $80. It's very simple 8th grade arithmetic. There's a lot of money in this business, so it was a great time, and so that's what basically invented me, and I was always probably a better salesman than director, so I could always whip up a spell and get them to say yes, and so I was working for everybody.
But you're also, I take it, talk about, Corman's on Sked. You're obviously very efficient and got stuff done,
Yeah.
right? And
It always looked like a movie, even though back in those days they go, make it look like MTV.
Yeah.
Make it look like MTV. I got
Right.
backlight.
Because they heard that from somebody else.
Yes, exactly.
right.
But David, a lot of the titles, a lot of the movies and titles, they're kind of similar to maybe a bigger film at the time, right? I mean, like some of
sometimes don't want
like
to
Asylum, you're
yeah,
not
or but like
gonna-
Creepozoids always was in the wave of when there's a lot of alien.
Well, that's what Creepozoids was. Creepozoids was originally, that was the second picture I did. Because in Dre Maniac, which I was called Succubus when I first made it, was a female Freddy Krueger.
Matt likes that.
I'm listening.
And then I remember delivering my director's cut, and Debbie Dion, this executive there, she goes, "Why are all the guys getting naked?"
Well, why not?
And I said,
Equal time.
And I said, I don't know. It just
It fits the narrative.
It's a narrative. It's propelled
and
by
little
narrative.
did I know that on the East Coast, Tim Kincaid was directing Breeders and Mutant Hunt and everything.
Robot Holocaust.
And he was
Sure.
also a gay
Yes.
pornographer. So
Right.
they literally had two gay pornographers that he was making movies for Empire Pictures. It was crazy.
All I have to say is that you guys really confused me growing up. But I'm very open-minded now.
Stay that way.
Yes.
So, but no, it was a good run with him, and then everything kind of changed. But I did Dr. Alien for him. Oh, Creepozoids was originally called Mutant Spawn 2000.
I like
And it
that.
was
I like Creepozoids.
I do
better.
like Creepozoids,
I do
too.
too.
Great title.
Creepozoids was supposed to be a knockoff of Ghoulies.
Yeah.
Really?
Thank God it wasn't.
And I pitched both of them. He says, I like the idea of an Aliens knockoff, but I like the title Creepozoid, so combine them, go make it.
There you go.
And so-
Talk about a movie that there's so many things that I did not see that coming. The strange baby man that comes out of the alien. I was like,
Yes.
There you go.
wow.
It should be in every movie.
Yeah.
really.
Like, boy, this thing keeps topping itself.
Yeah, well, that was the idea. The movie was called Creepozoid, so I thought, well, I shot the whole movie in 1,200 square feet. I shot the entire film in 12. I literally, there's one door in the movie.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole movie, it's the same door. You just redressed the sets around the doorway.
David, how long did it take you to do Creepozoids?
I shot first unit in 12 days, and then I did about 4 or 5 days of just Creepozoids inserts. Yeah, it's about 15 days.
Well, that's not bad. I mean,
35 millimeter, one camera.
Well, you know how people are saying, "Oh, this was shot in 2 days." It's not one of those.
Well, that was
Creepozoid-
much later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's a lot of effects, and there's a lot of things
Yeah,
going on
exactly.
in that film.
That movie, I went. See, the thing is, Charlie said, "Why don't you go to John Biegler's shop and see if he'll do the shot?" I went to John Biegler. I said, "I got about $1.97." John says, "I can't do it. I'm busy doing all this other stuff, but here's a few guys." And there was a couple of guys in his shop, Tom Flouts and Peter Carcillo, who had just started their own little shop. And I said, "Look,"
Cool.
I said, "I'll put your name all over this movie."
So they're hungry to
paid
do,
ads,
do their own thing.
poster,
Right.
everything.
That's awesome.
And I'll pay you, but I've got only a nickel. But the movie's called Creepozoids, so I want wall-to-wall Creepozoids.
Right.
And
That's
so,
what the audience is going to come to see.
Exactly. So we kind of created everything they could afford, and we just shot the shit out of it. So it's 72
That's awesome.
minutes of monsters. I mean,
Creepozoids.
Right.
It is Creepozoids. I mean, there's Linnea Quigley in mint condition.
Well,
naked.
yeah, she.
Take a shower. Yes. Yeah.
She's beautiful.
Well, she's also in mint condition now. She still has
yeah.
the body
I'll
of she's so beautiful.
I agree.
She and I became friends even way before that when I was a craft service guy as a PA in between the Roger Corman and into the love story business.
Yeah.
And I worked on films like Angel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
I know. I'm in the movie too.
No.
Yes, I
The
was-
first angel.
The first
Angel.
High school girl by day,
Exactly.
hooker by night.
I saw that at Marine Quad. I
Couldn't
did.
possibly happen.
Exactly. And it was a gigantic hit. But
Yeah.
I got screen credit on that, and also I did Crimes of Passion for Ken Russell.
Oh, wow.
Nice. Oh, one of my favorite filmmakers.
He's incredible. And Tough Turf.
Oh yeah, I love
Tough
Turf.
I'm in that movie too.
Is that Lori Laughlin?
No, it's Kim Richards.
Kim Richards
Kim
and
Richards.
James Spader and
Yes.
introducing Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I
I'm
didn't know
still
that
in
was
love with Kim Richards, but
Yeah.
warts and all.
Yeah, she was. But that was a tough show. That was Fritz Kirsch, who I adore. So I was doing craft service, and then I did one movie where I realized I shouldn't be a craft service guy. Was a movie called, I don't even want to mention the name. It had a bunch of comedy, but the director had directed some big shot commercial, and we saw the sun come up twice in one day.
Oh, yeah.
I said, I'm out of
geez.
this craft service thing
Wow.
because these
Yeah.
fucking directors. I've hated directors. So I said, I'm going to become one because I can't. If I'm going to produce movies, I got to become a director because I fucking hate directors.
Right.
We would
yeah.
spend, they would get 4 weeks of prep with their DP, and it would still take 4 hours to figure out where to put the camera on stage. And it would drive me fucking nuts.
Right.
So always know your first shot. So while
Right.
they're setting up the first shot, you can figure out all the other shit. That's
Right.
what I figured out.
Sure.
And I learned a lot from not only Robert Vincent O'Neill, the director of Angel, who is the sweetest guy you'll ever meet, was doing 75, 80 camera setups a night with his DP, Andrew Davis, the director of The Fugitive. He was the DP. He was the DP on that.
I did not know that.
And it was a great. I met a young PA on that named Frank Darabont.
Oh, yeah. What's he doing?
Scrap dishes.
Okay now?
Scrappy young kid.
So anyways, he went off to do a little short film with Stephen King called I can't remember what it was called, The Woman in the Room or something. I worked on that movie. Yeah. And so Frank is an old time friend, and so we, but I'd worked on this crazy comedy, and I go fuck it, and that's when that's when I wrote that script and pitched it to Terry LeGrand, who let me direct.
I see.
So at that point, I was editing. I was head of post production for William Higgins and a number of other filmmakers, and I learned the whole business in adult. It was great. And distribution, I learned everything. Booking, prints, theater. I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, it's like you just well-rounded. You did every
because it was
aspect.
the same business, but a different subject matter.
Yeah.
But
Right,
back
right.
then, it was the same business.
Right.
But anyway, so and then I, once I start working with Charlie, and he around Dr. Alien, he wrapped up Empire because the bank that was lending all the studios the money at Canon and every Atlantic, the bank changed. I said, we don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, we heard some stories about that.
Yeah, it all kind of collapsed, and then Charlie went across the street, got a key, and started this thing called Full Moon across the street a minute later.
Wow.
And then he said, I'm doing this thing called Puppet Master, and I said, good luck. I'm going to try to take this Dr. Alien movie, which was the first movie released under his new Paramount deal. So I thought, well, since the Paramount logo is at the beginning of my movie, I thought maybe I might have a career in this. So I decided to do the trip around the business, you see. And I kind of worked for a lot of different people. But I went back to him when he said, I could really use you back here if you want to, produce some stuff for me. And so I went back to Full Moon, and I produced a number of films like Crash and Burn. And
Oh, yeah.
love that.
That's a good one.
and then David Allen was given, after 30 years of doing special effects shots for Charlie for a nickel, David was given his first directorial job, Puppet Master 2. And Charlie wanted me on that just because David did it a frame at a time in a room the size of this kitchen. So so he really needs somebody to keep him going because time was not of the essence with David.
Right.
He was a genius, Academy Award nominee and everything. I mean, brilliant. But he, I had a 40-man, 50-man crew, and it was like... So, but it was, I liked David. David did not like me because I was Charlie's guy.
Yeah.
So I ended up bringing on 2 other units with 2 other directors and DPs and shooting all the things that David wasn't getting. And so we finally went way over budget and over schedule on Puppet Master 2. And we ultimately brought it in and made the date. But then I said, if you hire anybody else to direct Puppet Master 3, I'll never speak to you again. And he said, okay, you want to direct Puppet Master 3? And I said, absolutely. He goes, get your ticket to Romania. And I went, I said, wait a second, that's not fair. He said Ted Nicolau just came back. It was a fucking nightmare. He did a film called Subspecies. And it was the ultimate, like 29 weeks of shooting. It was like communist rule, like the place was on fire and bullet holes everywhere. And so I was on a plane to Bucharest, and then I go, Charlie, it's the worst winter they've ever had. I said, I can't shoot this in frozen tundra. I gotta have a little bit of, it's gotta have. And so we had a really, really good line producer on this particular movie named John Schuweiler, who was the same guy that I met at Roger Corman's, who was Roger's assistant. He was a very active producer at the time. And I said, can we pull this off in L.A.? It was period costume drama,
Right.
Nazis and tanks.
In the 40s, cars.
And so
Yeah.
John did a very smart thing. He called up Universal Studios and says, I've got $1,200 a day. And they said, we'll show you where to park.
Really?
Yeah, because nobody rents that place at the time.
Wow,
That's right.
awesome to be shooting at Universal.
They needed
like, all
movies to be shot there for the tour.
Exactly. That's what I've heard.
And I remember
So you
watching
could've
that
been-
film and seeing those sets and going, yeah, that's it.
So you could have been like a person, a tourist on Universal Train,
Exactly.
saying, they're shooting Puppet Master 3.
Exactly. Well, what they
Or,
said,
no, they probably didn't say what the title was, Sean. They probably said,
but,
there's a new
they
feature
actually
film.
did, and they said, this is Puppeteer 3. They got it wrong. So they wanted, but we needed the old European set, which nobody used. It was
Right,
strictly
right.
for the tour.
Yeah.
So they go get in there. So we were there. We got 2 days and 2 nights, I think. And I shot the shit out of it.
Was this where they shot all the old Universal horror films?
Yes, James Whale
That's-
directed
yeah.
movies on
Awesome.
the set. So it was kind of cool, and we shot the shit out of it. And then, but we also were able to see on this particular on Puppet Master 3. I had a really good writer, Courtney Joyner,
Yes.
who's also a film historian. Very
Oh my
very
gosh!
much like
Yeah,
David.
he
Right,
beats
yeah,
us.
One of our dearest friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And,
know him then.
And I said, Courtney, I kind of need you. First of all, we shot the first draft.
Really?
I mean, he came up with history of the puppets and the life force.
I remember him saying,
reading this script. I go, "This is fucking awesome. This is like a real movie."
I think he was saying something like at the time it was like a Where Eagles Dare version of Puppet Master because he loved like historical
And
stuff.
I said, "Courtney, what's Eagles Dare?" And then Courtney said, "Okay, what do you need to do?" And Courtney, that's why I had him involved in the casting. He was on the set every day.
Really?
I ran everything creatively past Courtney.
Really?
Absolutely. I'm one of those directors I'm one of the directors that likes writers, and to me, best idea wins because I'm going to get the credit for it anyway.
Right.
So I had him there every day casting. We went through the Academy Players Director. You go, what about this? He goes, you should get this, and you should Walter Gotell. Who's Walter Gotell? You want to do this? You want to do this? That's all Courtney. That's all Courtney. I was so blessed. We had an amazing Italian cinematographer. We had Universal. We had this cast.
It really does elevate the series. I think.
really does.
Really,
What's also great about that film is that, in a sense, you're really doing the first Puppet Master.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes,
It's a preview.
yes, right.
And so it was kind of a surprise that the director of Sorority Babes and the SLIMEBALL BOWL-O-RAMA pulled this movie off, especially at our Paramount screening, which Quentin Tarantino was there because he was a friend of all of us.
Wow.
And we had a great, the sales department at Paramount sort of staggered out of the screening saying, wow, this is a real movie. We can actually do some business with this. Ironically, it was the lowest budget of all three.
Wow.
No.
It was. It was shot in 18 days, a first unit, and only 6 days of puppet footage, and with very little stop motion, and because we had very little money, and it was lower budgeted than the first two movies.
Wow.
So that movie, I felt kind of gave me a little bit of currency at the company, and I could kind of call my own. But then I kind of tried to take that to other companies, and I ended up directing other films. I directed an HBO movie and things like that. But I always came back to Charlie because, this business is full of peaks and valleys. And
Sure.
you have a slow couple of months and you need to pay the rent. You call Charlie and say, please give me a fucking movie.
And you also, some of those movies, like you mentioned before we started recording here, that Dr. Alien and Puppet Master 3 are two of your favorite films.
It is. Well, Dr. Alien I did right before that, and that's another case.
What's the premise of that?
Well, Dr. Alien is about a teenage boy who experiences aliens, a hot alien chick coming down from space because on her planet the guy's sperm doesn't work anymore, so she needs hot Earthling male sperm, and so she comes down here to grab some sperm to go back to her planet.
Yeah.
You know that old story.
Still wouldn't have got me laid.
Exactly. But that was another case of a writer who literally made that movie happen because, first of all, we shot the first draft again. I came to him with a concept. I had one title. It was called I Was a Teenage Sex Mutant.
That's a good title.
And I came in with a title, and I met this incredible guy named Ken Hall, who is a genius, and he had already written Nightmare Sisters for me, which I made as a bet, 4 days and 35 millimeter, and we did some business with it. But Ken was like the funniest guy in the world, knew all the business, knew all about the fucking history of movies and genres and stuff. So he writes it, and I fucking fall out of my chair laughing. We get the movie made. We cast the piss out of it because we're shooting during the writer's strike at television, so all the actors are now ready to work for scale.
Really?
So we got Billy Jacoby from Cujo. We got Judy Landers, Troy Donahue came in, Arlene Kalanka. The whole Hee Haw gang was in. But Ken was there with me every minute of every day of casting and on the set and everything. So because Ken is he's such one thing about these really amazing writers, they know movies, so they know how to write for movies. You know what I'm saying? So they know how movies are made, and they know and Ken is a filmmaker. And so what I've always said is that Puppet Master 3 and Dr. Alien were director proof because the scripts were so bulletproof that all I had to do was say action and cut. It was all on the page. So
And the fact that you would actually trust the screenwriter.
Yeah,
that's rare.
But again, it's like, to me, it's like you read the material. The proof is in the pudding. The scripts, they crackled these scripts. I mean, they were just so much fun to read. And I said, these are going to be great movies. So it was that, and then Ken really was involved in the post-production, and he also called up Academy Award nominee Greg Canham to do the makeup effects.
The alien, the blue head alien.
Yeah. And so I just saw Greg just the other day at Monsterpalooza, and Greg said, hey, and so, but no, he came in. That was all Ken. I mean, Ken is a crazy combination of amazing writer, filmmaker, and makeup effects creature expert. So he he brought in all of his friends. And in that movie, that's the one I didn't actually take a fee on because I said, let's roll all of our cash into the movie. So I was able to extend the shooting schedule to 18 days, which was kind of unheard of at the time.
Right,
So we did that movie. And so I was very happy with it. And it turned out great. And that ended up being the first movie for the Paramount deal that Charlie had started.
Did you get paid on the back end though? I mean,
no back end, no. A lot of times,
no. You don't get like a little percentage.
Well, you know what it
like
is? It's like it's a strange business. Is sometimes you want to make a hit for the price,
Yeah.
and then that kind of gets you 12 more movies.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
Where you make your fee on, It just you want to get them as pregnant as possible. These producers, you know what I'm saying?
David, while you're getting everyone pregnant, can I just make this one comment?
What's that?
And that is that Kenneth J. Hall and I will be doing the audio commentary for Chamber of Horrors for Kino Lover on the 29th of this month, which is, of course, the Leslie Banks weird Edgar Wallace horror movie.
Love it.
That's a great one.
So
Look out for that. A keto lord.
Look out for that.
Anyways, back to me.
Yes.
Now we're going to get back. But I think Kenneth Hall needs a little love, don't you?
I just gave Kenneth all a little
Well, I
love.
just gave him a little more, bitch.
A little more bad.
Stop fighting.
Anyways.
We can't because we're mommy and daddy.
Okay.
There's a lot of love going on right
Anyway,
now.
so what did I go? Puppet Master, and then where did I go from
Did you
Puppet
leave
Master?
anything out, honey?
Well, actually, no. What was strange is I go back to Charlie, and I say, "You have any more jobs for?" He goes, "You know, Dave, I think we need an erotic line of movies." And I said, "Oh, really?" And he says, "Yes, I think we because back in the '90s, remember that whole erotic thriller?
Yes. Oh, yeah,
Shannon
totally.
Tweed was in every one of them."
course.
And so Paramount said, we could use a bunch of these because they released a couple of these movies that did very well direct to VHS actually. And so Charlie started this line called Torchlight, and he said, David, you're going to run this line. You're going to direct all these pictures. That sounds great. So we did Virgin Hunters and Beach Babes from Beyond and Cave Girl Island and
Cave Girl Island.
Blonde Heaven and then things like that. So, Charlie would look at the dailies and he'd go, a lot of guys getting naked. Must be my imagination. Anyways.
Again, you're following the books, following the novels.
He said, hey, look, the girls are getting naked. It's all working out. So anyways, we did a bunch of those. They did very well for him. They played late night. They played on the USA Up All Night.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, I was.
And it was this crazy thing where they would put basically completely edited versions of these sex movies.
Right.
Sure.
They cut out all the nudity, everything. They put 976 and 900 commercials in between them. Ridiculous.
Whoever
Anyways,
called.
That was like
yeah, exactly. No one ever bothered.
that was like Rhonda Shear was
Exactly.
hosting it,
Gilbert
right?
Gottfried, I think.
Yes,
was
that's right.
Sure.
That's right.
So those films did pretty well, and then I'm in Romania, so at this point, and I'm doing Lurid Tales of the Castle Queen.
Wow.
Great title.
And so it's 16th century costume drama, powdered wigs, ballroom scenes, horse and buggy, sword fights, and everything. It was Romania. That's like in your backyard.
That's a lot.
everywhere.
That's elaborate.
So 12 days with a lot of humping. And that was one of my Ellen Cabot movies. Because my mother wouldn't approve of this. And so, and then I come back to L.A., and I do a film called Bikini Goddesses on the Black Sea. It was kind of a Greek goddess. It was ridiculous. Anyway, so you could do that back then. And I get back, and this is back before they would write. There was no voicemail. You would actually have a message. Somebody called.
Right.
Old days.
Yeah.
And I go, okay,
Telegram.
yeah, exactly. So I got a call. Somebody called. Company called Hit Entertainment is called, and so I call them back. Oh, we're looking for directors. We're making a bunch of movies. Come have a meeting with us. And I said, okay. And I said, because these things never amount to anything.
Sure.
But I said, okay. So I said, where are you guys? We're in the Black Tower on in Westwood. And I go, oh, really? I said, you're there? And he goes, yeah, we own that building. I go, okay, well, maybe there's a little something going on here. Go have a meeting. I meet with these people, and they're like Israeli South Africans. They own all these restaurants, and they're diamond merchants in South Africa.
Okay.
Okay, because the craziest people get in this crazy racket.
Right, yeah.
So I said, okay. And I said, so what's the deal? Well, we want to make these low-budget action movies that you can do for $500,000 and put some names in it and action. That's an international currency at the time, was action. The Mark Dacascos movies, the Gary Daniels movies.
Like American Ninja.
Yeah,
and
all that
those.
kind of action
Sure.
type stuff. I said, great. sounds good to me. They go, well, we like your credits. I was non-union at the time, so I still am. But at the time, I was non-union. They said, we're looking for a non-union director. So why don't you do this? Why don't you go ahead and take your best movie and go meet with our partner? So, okay. And he said, where is he? He's in Sunset Plaza Drive. He's got a house up there, his wife. And okay, I'll go meet with him. So I went up to the partner's house for dinner, and it was this lovely guy who was young and very back east. He was the Wall Street dude. He made all of his money in Wall Street. Really sexy kind of guy. And his wife was right over here, blonde, shiksa. And the kids were playing over here, big house. And I was just like, oh, you're my boy now, Dave. I'm on a bankroll. Just don't go over schedule, don't go over budget. Sounds good.
Yeah.
And we're gonna make these movies, and he's like really seductive and like hot and like really sexy. And I'm like going, Jesus Christ, this guy's amazing. So I make the first movie for him, Prey of the Jaguar, starring Linda Blair,
Wow.
Stacy Keach, Paul Bartel.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Maxwell Caulfield.
Okay. Yeah.
So I direct,
these are big people.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming with Linda Blair, they took very good care of the Jaguar.
Exactly. Exactly. We didn't, unfortunately. Well, that's a long story. Anyways, so I start doing this movie, and it's kung fu, and it's the Crow meets Batman for a nickel. Okay. So I go, okay. So I'm doing this one. We're camera Dutch angles. I'm trying to sass it up to make it look like I know what I'm doing. And then so Linda's like, day one, she's like, why did you hire me? I go, well, Roller Boogie is the greatest movie ever made. And she looked at me and she goes, nobody talks about Roller Boogie. And I said, but Linda, it's the greatest movie ever made. And so we were talking about I had my Roller Boogie press book, which Mark Lester signed, Dean Cundy signed.
Wow.
I had the whole press book.
Full circle.
Bruce Cone Curtis had signed it. It was just like and so she signed it. So we talked about that, and we talked about so now she was like, okay, I've got a gay director. It's cool. Yeah. I'm going to look good at least.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't have to worry about rap time when things get weird. So we're like day 4 or 5, and she goes, yeah, well, because I said, well, tell me about, Red Heat. And all these movies. I got right down to the dirty stuff.
Is that the one Linnea Quigley's in that too?
No,
she's in.
Chained Heat is the one with Sybil Danning and her, which I love that movie. But there's Red Heat, which is where she has a love scene with Sylvia Kristal, and they shot it in Austria.
Wow. No.
Yes, Red Heat. Linda Blair, and she broke her leg. They had to crawl through the sewers of Vienna, Austria. She had the stories. I was just like, oh my God. So we were talking, and she goes, I think I really want to do another movie with Ellen Burstyn. And she goes, did you do a movie with Ellen Burstyn? She goes, yes, David. It was called The Fucking Exorcist. I completely forgot that she was in The Exorcist. I swear to God, I knew she was in it, but it never came up because it was all about roller buggy.
It's only the most famous horror film of all time.
The craziest.
Probably,
anyway, so I make that movie, and then I deliver my director's cut. And this company was like a big company. They're going to do a movie with Ken Russell.
Yeah,
wow,
that's big.
I had done craft service for Ken Russell. So I said, oh man, you got Ken Russell. It's going to be great. It's called Skeletons. I know Ron Silver was going to be in it and all this stuff. It's great. So I deliver my director's cut. And there's nothing worse as a filmmaker when you deliver your director's cut on a Friday.
Yeah.
To wait till Monday to get the notes because you go, I'm the worst director in the world.
Yeah.
They're going to hate it. They're going to bring on another director. So I deliver the cut Saturday morning. They call. We got to meet immediately. We've got to meet. And be like, oh my God, it's going to be a fucking disaster. They're going to want to reshoot stuff. They're going to replace me. So I go meet with those people, the producers and this sexy executive producer from Wall Street. And they said, look, love the movie Lock Picture.
Oh.
I said,
really?
Yeah. They go, let's lock it. We love it. We have a problem. And I said, what's the problem? And they go, well, Ken Russell just said that he can no longer do Skeletons in 4 weeks. He's going to need 6 weeks. And we don't play that game here. So we pulled his work permit, and he's now on his way back to London.
Oh.
And I said, excuse me? And they said, yeah, we want you to take over the show.
Take over a movie from Ken Russell?
Ken Russell, who I was his craft service guy 12 years earlier.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Okay, talk about Eve Harrington.
Total.
So you did make a hell of a chili, though.
So I'm like going, okay. And then, of course, I immediately, being the jerk I am, I go, how'd you guys fuck this up? You almost had a Ken Russell movie. What are you guys thinking? He's a genius. I go, Dave, he changed his tune. He wanted more money for the budget. They thought that we could do a bait and switch. And these guys were diamond merchants from South Africa.
Right.
Fuck show business. We're here to make a nickel.
Right.
So I said, fine. I go, but why not just cancel the movie? We have a pay or play deal with Ron Silver, $400,000, whether we make the movie or not.
Oh, wow.
So we got to make the movie. The thing is none of our buyers internationally know you. And I said, that's a good thing. The problem is when they do know you and they don't like you.
Yeah.
So I said, there's a chance that they might think I'm a genius. They go, no, they don't think you're a genius. So what we're going to do is we got Ron Silver. We're going to put some more names in it because we thought Ken was going to be a talent magnet.
Sure.
But Oliver Reed passed. Oliver Reed doesn't pass.
Wow.
Okay, Oliver Reed was in Women in Love.
Yeah.
But a lot of these actors felt that Ken made them look foolish.
Really?
Yes. At a certain age, they go, we've already done our Ken Russell movie. We don't want to be silly. Wrestling guys in front of a fireplace.
Sure.
And so we don't want to be. Because this was a crazy movie, too. So I go, okay. And I said, well, because Roy Scheider passed. And I go, why? Roy Scheider doesn't pass on anything right now.
Unfortunately, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, at the time, it was like,
anything.
it was sad.
Clint Howard?
No. Andrew's saying that. So anyway, so I say, okay, well, let me. Okay, I'm happy to. So I had to start shooting in 2 weeks. We looked at the script. I met with the poor writer. The writer is now a huge, very successful director named Joshua Michael Stern, who did like that Kevin Costner baseball movie. He went to, but here he goes. The producer says, Josh, we have some good news for you and some bad news. Good news is we're actually going to make your movie. Bad news is we fired Ken Russell and we hired the director of Bikini Goddesses. Belly crying writer. So
Unsketched.
Yeah, exactly. This is his first script being produced. I felt so bad. I said, trust me, I'll do you good.
There you go.
So they ended up hiring Christopher Plummer and
James
Coburn.
James Coburn.
That's amazing.
And Dennis Christopher, Carol Baker from Baby Doll.
Dee Wallace.
Dee Wallace, and it was an all-star cast. They were able to take, because I was still going to do it in 3 weeks. So they took the extra money and cast it up, and it was a real challenge for me because we shot at Warner Brothers and we shot at Disney Studios, and we were non-union, sneaking in through the back way, hiding our truck. It was like running all over the place.
Wait a minute, you could shoot there and you were non-union?
Yes, we came in through.
How did you do that?
It was we couldn't go through the union gate. There was a non-union gate, and so the non-union gate was like where the janitors came in and stuff. So we're like going there. Hi, James Coburn, and so we snuck onto these backlots because we needed Middle America, Connecticut, or like Connecticut, small town. You can't, it's tough to find that around.
Yeah.
So we shot on these backlots. And so I directed the piss out of it. I did everything I could, and I was so out of my game. It was so tough because I decided, because I'm an idiot, because back when we shot on film, I said, I'm going to shoot. As a projectionist, I always love showing the films in 35 millimeter CinemaScope. You put the new lenses on, 235, widescreen, like Panavision, but the real, not Super 35, the real scope. Zulu, Dawn, all these great movies.
Right.
So I thought, well, I want to shoot in scope. And the producer's like, bigger the better. So we shot it in CinemaScope, but we couldn't afford Panavision, so we imported these like East German scope lenses. It was like the craziest fucking movie I'd ever made. And so we did it, and the movie looked kind of good. It's kind of undercovered, and Ron Silver and I mean, Christopher Plummer and I, he's a tough guy.
Yeah.
Fucking loved me. Fucking loved me. And he was the one who ended up writing the letter to the Canadian government so I can immigrate to Canada for work reasons. So I'm a dual citizen now. But that was Chris Plummer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Star Crash.
Star Crash. But he's also the Laurence Olivier of Canada. And so when you get a letter from him, Immigration Canada said, you're in, stamp.
Right.
So, but that was him. Coburn, a dream, one take.
Really?
Lovely coolest actor ever.
Lovely man, and also just completely out of my league. And I go, James, if you want to do another take, I don't know what I just say, do you want another take? And I'm not going to say no. And he goes, Dave, I've been doing the same performance for 46 years. You get one. It's going to be the same if you want a second one. I said, I like this guy.
He's the great. I did stand-up for years, and I did Evening at the Improv. Robert Culp was the host.
Oh, nice.
And he brought James Coburn to the taping.
Yeah.
And after my set, James Coburn went up to me and said, "You are out of sight."
That's James Coburn. That's James Coburn. No, he was a great guy, and there was a great. Ron had not played a good guy, a protagonist in forever.
Yeah, he was
like the
always
bad
the heavy.
guy. Yeah, always the heavy, and he was so worried that he was not appealing enough. So he's worried about shadows on his face, the camera being too low, but also he's like brilliant. I mean, this actor
he's a magnetic actor.
I mean, his performance was electrifying in this film. But he was the first one to sign up for a Ken Russell movie, and here I come waddling in, and he's like, needing that $400,000.
Right.
So, but what was bizarre about him is that I thought that he fucking hated me, but he was always wanted to be the last close-up. So I do a master, I do singles, and everybody else, and land on him. He needed 65 times before he was actually happy with what.
Really?
Whereas Coburn and Plummer wanted to be first up.
Yeah.
So for political reasons, I had to figure out my blocking, because if I did a master, but I'm looking that way and it's Ron, I had to go and relight for this way before I got to. So I had they don't teach you this shit in film school. Let me tell you something, okay? So it was all this stuff. I'm trying to, at 18, I had to click and finish the movie, deliver it cut. They love the movie. FBI shows up.
FBI?
Yes. What? And I go to the Black Tower. It's empty. And the receptionist there, and she's very teary-eyed and kind of not a lot of sleep. And I go, what the fuck? The FBI showed up. Everybody's gone. My lovely, sexy, Jewish Wall Street guy was Jordan Belfort, who was the Wolf of Wall Street.
Wow.
No.
Look at the screen credits on Skeletons.
Oh,
look at who the producers are.
My God.
And they rated. He told me the whole story about the yacht being sunk. I was in love with this guy.
Yeah.
I go, oh my God, I finally found a bank, and the guy's hot, and he loves me, and he just wants to give me money to make movies, and he ends up being a criminal motherfucker. That's my producer right there.
Wow. Oh my God.
And so
pure eye candy.
But they ended up selling the movie to HBO, and we did okay, and I kind of joined the DGA, and I thought I was a big shot director.
Hey.
And it didn't happen. I mean, right after that, I did a film called The Journey Absolution for sci-fi called The Journey Absolution. It was with Richard Grieco and Mario Lopez and Jamie Presley and stuff. And I got in the DGA, and I thought, I'm on my way. Crickets for a year.
Really?
Crickets for a year. Tumbleweeds through my career.
Now,
You're kidding.
Couldn't get arrested.
Was this like maybe early 90s now?
This was about 96, 97.
Because I was going to say, it seemed like that period, like from the late 70s into the early mid 80s, was like this Wild West time where, like you said, like talk about exploitation. It was like there was such a demand for stuff, and it seemed like it was relatively easy to churn out these films, right?
Did that have anything to do? The Crickets did that have anything to do with this prior association?
No.
That's what I was wondering. Maybe it had something to do with this.
I joined the DGA.
Oh, that's what it was. Oh.
Because now you can get George Clooney coming for Scale to direct that episode and bring all of his pals. Suddenly I thought, now that I'm DGA, the offers are going to come rolling in. Crickets. I ended up going right back to non-union under all these assumed names that you might see.
That's why I was
asking. You go under a lot, sometimes even a woman's name.
I went back to Charlie and I said, I fucking need a job. And he says, wow. So the DGA worked out pretty well for you.
Wow.
It was the biggest professional mistake of my career.
Really?
Yes. So because now you're in a different club.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now you can get anybody. And then I found out that 98% of the Directors Guild director members are unemployed. It's like this. It's worse than SAG. Now I'm not anti-union. I'm a left labor union, but I got to fucking work.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so
Union core.
And so exactly. So I ended up. I go back to Charlie. He says, "You want to go to Romania?" And I said yes. And so I did a Retro Puppet Master, and I cast a young actor named Greg Sestero, who went on to do the movie The Room,
Right.
and which is a whole other chapter.
Wow.
One of my favorites.
Exactly. So I've never seen it, but anyway. So,
You must.
no, I got you.
You
I
truly
will
must.
only see it at midnight with an audience.
Yeah,
you have
that
to.
is the only way to see it.
With Tommy Wiseau.
Which is so weird because I ended up doing a ton of movies. I got busted by the DGA. I became Financial Core. I finally got out. I became a Canadian. I was working up in Canada. I did Sci-Fi Channel movies. I work for anybody if the price is right.
Right.
And so that was my career. But what's bizarre about all of this is that flash forward all these years, The Room, which I've never seen, starring the boy that I discovered, Greg Sestero, in Retro Puppet Master, decides he's going to write a book called The Disaster Artist about his experience with The Room.
Okay.
And then James Franco decides to option the movie rights to The Disaster Artist. and is playing Tommy Wiseau, and his brother Dave Franco is playing Greg Sestero, my boy. Wow. And it's a $38 million New Line Cinema Warner Brothers movie. And this was all going on the end of last year. And then suddenly my manager in L.A., Mara Santino, she calls me and she goes, Dave, I got the script for the Disaster Artist, and it's all stamped, and we're not supposed to show it to anybody, but you do know you're in the movie.
No.
And I go, well, I knew that I was in the book. I was mentioned like when he said I was in Romania doing The Puppet Master, but like not even my name. I said, no, you have dialogue in this movie.
Oh my gosh.
I go, really? I said, a lot? And he, well, they got 4 lines. He's directing the guy in Puppet Master.
Yeah, 4 lines.
And I said, tomorrow, I said, wouldn't it be funny? She goes, I'm way ahead of you. She goes, I'm not calling you for information. I'm calling you because I want that commission. She goes, I'm going to pitch you to casting on this $38 million James Franco movie, which stars Zach Galifianakis and Seth Rogen and all this stuff, and you can play yourself. And I go, well, I'm not an actor. I don't have.
Yes, you are.
I'm an exhibition. I'm not an exhibitionist. I'm a voyeur. I like to watch people. I like to be the center of attention. She goes, it's 4 lines. You're an actor. She goes, the casting loved it. Ran it past Franco. He loved it. Next thing you know, I was on the set of this movie playing myself. They completely reconstructed Romania in Pasadena at a huge estate. Wow. No. Old BL-35 cameras, Cossack hats with the crew. And here's James Franco directing, and David Franco. I got these crazy pictures of him in the outfits that I dressed Greg in Retro Puppet. They completely redid. And I'm like I can't. And I want one of these really bad, and I can't because I'm working and I can't. And so I do these scenes.
He played the cocktail.
I played myself, and I'm horrible. I'm so awful because Franco's like going, you're the real dude, right? And I go, yeah, I'm the real dude. How do you want me to say these? Because these lines, he goes, lines? I go, yeah, I'm supposed to say cut, print, and there's and he goes, to cut, print. Just direct him about the puppets. Just direct him about the puppets and stuff like that. So it goes on and on and on, and then they asked me back. And I got to work with Bryan Cranston, and a bunch of people. Yeah, so as myself
in a scene. Yes, I get it. You're not actually directing
ridiculous.
them. Yes.
That's
so now I'm in the casting scene. We're shooting in the old soundstage downtown where they shoot Mad Men.
Yeah,
it's where the guy's office. I'm so hideous in this movie, but that's all I can say. I signed an NDA, but all I can say is that hopefully this movie will come out. Because I don't know who wants to see this movie, but it's only.
Come on.
It's like a strange full circle.
Sharon, like sitting at the set, and they're shooting the scene with Sharon Stone where she's playing Greg's agent. She comes into the room. Okay, Greg, this is the script of Retro Puppet Master. Here's your plane tickets for Romania. I'm watching Sharon Stone say retro. It's like Vertigo. I'm like looking at the real Greg. I go, what the fuck is going on? And
Lines of reality
stagger out of the set.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest fucking
That's
thing.
what you have.
It's crazy.
But I mean, like, if you haven't seen The Room, like, it'll all come together when you see The Room.
Exactly.
Because The Room is like Plan 9 bad.
I know.
It's bad in ways that you go, oh my God, that's a brilliant way to be bad. I never thought of that.
Right.
So it's really retro Puppet Master.
It sounds bad to me.
But
a must see.
But basically, working for Charlie, and then in '97 or '98, '99,
you get $3 million movie.
No, I get a movie. I make a movie called Voodoo Academy, which is my coming out of the closet, like with guns ablazing, with feather boas exploding out of the closet.
Was that it?
Yes, and I make this movie, and Charlie looks at the dailies and goes, "What the fuck did you just do?" I said, "It stars your girlfriend."
What?
No questions asked. And so I say to Charlie, Charlie, I got this idea for a movie. I said, it's the first horror movie for girls. And he goes, wow, that's a pretty good pitch. First horror movie for girls, that's a good hook. I said, yeah, and I'll star your girlfriend in it. She'll be the star of it. He goes, okay, could you do it for a nickel? I said, I'll do it for a nickel. He says, okay, do that one, but in the same week, I need you to shoot a film called Totem. I said, sounds great to me. So I shoot this movie. He looks at the dailies, fucking hates the fucking dailies. This guy's in underwear. It's the gayest thing I've ever heard.
It's one of your movies.
And then they release it on DVD. It becomes a gargantuan hit because nobody made horror movies for gay guys before. I mean, excuse me, horror movies for girls.
Oh, wait a minute. I think we heard that the first time.
Nothing gay about this movie. There's no gay guys in this movie. So and it did really well. And I go, there's a business here. And that's when I started my company, Rapid Heart. And Charlie was doing his stuff, and I was making my sort of horror movies for girls, and I did The Brotherhood, and we did very well with them. And I've done about 50 or 60 of them, actually. So I've been working out an output deal with E1. I did a movie a month for 5 years for them, and directed about 130 movies, and I own about half of them. So that's the business
incredible.
so far. Yeah, it's just, but again, it's like follow your own passion. It's really, I mean, when you get to be my age, 54, Studio 54.
Hey.
You gotta, you're getting out of bed. You gotta fucking have some passion for what you're doing. You gotta, and you gotta own it. You gotta fucking own the movies. You gotta make your own movie. You can't listen to stupid executives who don't know anything anymore. That's why I'll never be rich, because I hate stupid people.
Rich enough?
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
What is it though that's like today that's different though as far as exploitation cinema, because it's gone through lots of changes over the decades. But what is it now? Is it harder? Is it easier to make?
With all the outlets of places.
But does that make it harder, actually?
Yeah.
Well, filmmaking is now democratized. When I was in the business in the 80s, there was 7 of us making B movies. There was me, Fred Olin Ray, Jim Wynorski, Roger, David Pryor over at AIP, and maybe 2 other guys that were constantly in prep, shooting, or post consistently. There were 7 of us because it was a hermetically sealed industry almost. You had to know how to do 35 and finish to answer print and know the stuff, which I all learned in the love story business. And also guys that grew up with drive-in theater movies and stuff like that had a passion for exploitation films, because you really wanted to deliver a hell of a trailer in a great poster.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of what it was back then, because they were pre-selling these films worldwide based on a poster and maybe a little bit of a trailer.
Wasn't some of the Charles Band movies like he would just literally give you a title and a poster?
And a poster.
Yeah, there were
very AIP.
Well, there were times with Charlie where I desperately needed a job, and I would figure out the movie by the time I left the elevator to get to his office, because there was all these preliminary sort of it was artwork that was sort of designed to be movies that were going to be made in the future. It was sort of like, what do they call that? They call it sort of like, what did Ralph McQuarrie do in Star Wars? They were called
pre-production.
Well, no, it was called conceptual art. Conceptual art.
Sure.
It was sort of, this is what we kind of envision. He'd had hundreds of these things. So by the time you got to the end of the hallway, you already had the movie in your head. You go, I got a great idea. Zombie Queen. I love it. So it was, so you were inspired. You can do that. And that's how he did it. And he always made it work somehow. But he's like the greatest salesman that's ever walked the face
He
of
was
the earth.
always, in those video zone things, he would always introduce them. And he was doing stuff like behind the scenes, making of these,
Nobody did that back then.
Yeah, that was like something new back then.
And it became very popular.
Yeah.
To the point where people said, "Fuck the movie, we want to see the featurettes." So no, that was kind of how it was back then. But I think it became democratized when digital technology and the internet, or broadband in particular, changed, because now you could be in Muskegon, Michigan, and get a 24p camera at Best Buy and $100 editing software on the internet, and you're in the feature film business.
Yeah.
And some of them look pretty good.
Right.
Yeah, when a fan film looks as good as something that's released in the theater.
So that's when I go, okay, it's all over. So you better have a niche, and you better be a fucking hooker, because 90% of my day is sales. And you have to remember all the people you met over the years who are now handling acquisitions at AT&T, and the guy who's now he's in Verizon Fios, and how about that dude that's over at so-and-so. And that's how Charlie has created his success, because he's really good at sales, but he remembers these people and he's become friends with them. But also with me, it was like, the reason I got an output deal with E1 is because the head of acquisitions 20 years earlier was my assistant, So it was all those hands you shake. It's still a relationship business, no matter how much we communicate digitally. It's still kind of like, okay, we know you can deliver. We know you can deliver on a certain date. We know we're not going to be embarrassed, at least not that embarrassed, by the movie you deliver, and maybe there's a business here, because no one knows anything anymore.
And you're not an asshole.
And you're not an asshole.
That's important.
Yeah, but also you have to be the guy that's going to deliver on date certain, especially when you're dealing with the whole video on demand world and the SVOD and TVOD and iTunes and all this stuff. So it's really, really tough now, because also the internet has created sort of a piracy thing where now nobody wants to pay for movies. It's in the internet, should be for free, right?
Yeah, James, isn't that strange?
Mr.
Pirate bastards.
Well,
No, I'm not saying that that's the only problem. I'm just saying that, when you have 7,000 feature films submitted to Sundance that were made that year, that's one every hour. How do you, with all the noise, how do you become
you stand out.
How do you stand out? So you have a customer base, you have a name that might trigger some search engines, some keywords that might. I mean, it's a different business.
Sorority, babes, slime-o-rama.
Or actors,
Well, I was at Monsterpalooza, and one of the main big horror movie websites. The guy goes, "Oh, every time I do a post, I always in the keywords put teenage girls shitting their pants and all the keywords." And I went, "Excuse me."
Remember that, guys.
He goes, that always does really well because we get high search engine placement for that. I went, I just almost felt you could have knocked me over with a feather.
Wow.
That's what this business has become in 2016. So the thing is, I live on the library. I direct for hire. I'm now directing movies that play on Lifetime. I just finished a Christmas movie for Ion with Vivica A. Fox.
Wow.
So I'm also the guy that's like, it's not like I moved up to those. It's just all those companies moved down to me because they need a movie in a week.
Well, you're a reliable resource
that can make a movie in a week.
Yeah.
That looks like I spent 3 weeks.
Right.
So it's really a trick, and that's why it all is, the way it is now. And I'm, look, I mean, I'm a swinging bachelor. I don't have a wife and 3 kids to feed. It's a little different. I live like a poor person. And I pour all my money into the movies that I make because I like to own negatives and I like to own things.
Right, cool.
Surprisingly, once in a while, a movie that you make for a nickel is just incredibly, shockingly successful.
It has a life. Yeah.
It's like you make a movie, you go, why did Netflix take this? And they do. And then, really, that one? Of all the ones that... It's how you hit them at the right week with the right competition. And the
nickel part seems to be pretty important.
What's funny is that at that, like, for example, Redbox pays the same for my DVDs as they do for a studio picture. So it's like... which is very little. But once in a while, I can sneak a movie. It's a shotgun approach, and you hope that maybe somewhere in this whole business that there's not a competition for that type of movie, and maybe that movie might have been popular a week earlier. They make a buying decision. It is literally
it's like black magic.
It's so out of your hands nowadays.
Yeah.
At this point in your career, after you've made so many features, do you have a particular enjoyment in making a certain type of feature rather over another? Or is it pretty much just a day's work?
And I get asked that question like every day. And it's
thanks, James.
No, but it's a serious question because people say like, why do you do this? I mean, and it's like, well, I like working and I also like making movies. And it's like, I enjoy every movie I make. And they say, what is your favorite one? I go, I don't know. I like them all, but there's some days I like better than others. And I don't sit around watching my movies all day. But I'm very grateful that I can do this for a living. And I'm also... It's really liberating when you have young gay horror film fans throughout the country and world who email you say, I saw Voodoo Academy and I said, oh, finally they made a movie for me, a horror movie for me. Those are profound moments when you get these and so I'm not saying that I make gay horror movies. I'm just saying that I've got a huge gay following, but it's just nice to be able to creatively wake up in the morning with an idea for a movie and it's on video on demand in 90 days. I kind of like that.
Is there also a part, considering that you have this gay horror fan base, that you're a person who goes to Monsterpalooza, that you have a love for the genre,
you have a sense of history of cinema, too.
And that there is something that's just something about the horror genre and science fiction genre that it's like a kid playing in a sandbox. It's just pure fun.
Right. I think that's it. I think there are worse jobs, except when you're on an 18-page day and you've only shot 4 pages in 10 hours. And then you've got to make your day with all masters and maybe a couple of singles. But for the most part, I'm grateful because, I also shot movies all over the world. The Philippines, I did a Kung Fu movie, shot a horror movie in China, South Africa, the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, Europe, Romania. So I've been to the land that God forgot. Okay. Okay. So when I come back to Hollywood, I can't complain about anything. So, because I've seen how bad life can be. So I'll have a bad day and it's like, oh my God, it's just like, the notes I'm getting back on the script from the things that are so stupid. I'll forge through it. Directors now, because they're a dime a dozen, good ones too, you tend to just try to choose your words as well as you can with the people who are in charge, and you try to deliver what they want, and that's kind of what my function is now on the work for hire. My own movies, I kind of come up with these crazy gimmicky ideas, and I think it's fun. I mean, they get a kick out of it. So started a horror line of films called 1313, which was the most successful horror franchise I've ever been involved with. For me.
Wow.
Yeah, more than Puppet Master or anything else. It did really well for me, financially, and also just as a nice library item. But and my partners on those films. But I'm trying to mix it up a little bit more, you know. And with this Christmas movie I did, and some other types of films that I do, family films. I did a film called A Talking Cat. Which was
That's horror.
It was horrible. But then that movie comes out, a movie I made in 3 days as a joke, you know, thinking,
Wow.
and that's the only time I'm getting emails. We'd like to buy the theater rights for this. So really, live. And then that was of all the movies I made, that was the only phone call I got from the MST3K people.
Really?
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
And they want it, and we're going to try to make a deal.
Okay.
Wow.
But of all the movies, I mean, that one, it was just kind of I did a whole series of family films because that's what all the experts told me I should be making.
Sure.
They were pretty much all wrong, but I did them anyways. I just got to stick with what you know, kind of, especially if you're going to pay for it yourself, that you're passionate about. So, but that one's done very well, and it's silly, and it's got a little internet traction, but I don't know. I take it one day at a time, and just, you know, sometimes I like to slow down a little bit, but for the most part, I kind of take the offer at hand, and if there's an opportunity, I just say yes if the money's right. I hate to say that, but it's the truth.
Is it true? Because I've always heard the theory that horror films are great because horror films usually make their money back, or they usually make a profit in some way because everybody seems to gravitate towards that kind of material.
Well, horror is an international currency. I know a lot of people who've not made their money back on horror films,
Okay.
Yeah.
who've actually lost a lot of money in horror films. I always tend to try to make it for as least amount of money as I can.
Good idea.
And I spend the money and put it on the screen, meaning a name or some kind of visual effect or something. But for the most part, on my films that I own, that I've financed and made, I've made my money back pretty much on all of them. Except like one I just, like 90210 Shark Attack. I thought, what a great idea. I thought Donna Wilkes from Jaws 2.
Wow.
Jeff Decker from Sharknado.
Oh.
You know, Judson Berza from Survivor. I thought, why didn't I just
give it time.
It has to. It's like fine wine. It gets better with age.
Wait, 90210 is Beverly Hills. It's not Coastal. How does that work?
What? Really? God damn it! Now I know why that movie was a bomb.
You guys should have took a meeting.
The girl. It's a long story. Watch the movie. It's fabulous, fabulous. But I got 4 movies coming up for Halloween, though.
That's awesome.
Right.
I've got Sorority Slaughterhouse
Nice.
with about a killer clown doll in a sorority with the voice of Eric Roberts.
Lovely.
God.
Yeah.
We're there.
I've got Evil Exhumed, a mummy movie I made in Canada with Eric Roberts, a mummy movie.
Ooh.
And then
Tell him I love him.
Eric
by the way.
Roberts.
I love him. I've made 25 movies with him.
With Eric Roberts?
Yeah.
Wow.
Really?
He's my neighbor.
I love
He
that
still
guy.
does not know who I am.
He's boss. He's boss.
He'll walk up and he'll go, "Boss?" That's what, and I go. He goes, "Boss, where do you want me?" He's a sweetheart. I love the guy. I'm really good friends with his wife. So, anyway, and then I did Asian Ghost Story with Cynthia Rothrock.
Wow. I miss Cynthia Rothrock.
Yes,
I haven't
me
seen her in a
too.
while.
Yeah.
Have you guys had her on the show?
No.
You've got to get her. She's the
love to have
sweetest
her on.
thing in
Let's
the
have her.
world.
James, write that down. Write that down.
No, hook you up.
She still talk to Michelle Yeoh?
You know, you have to ask her because I'm not the biggest fan of the martial arts movies.
Okay.
And she's on like
Oh.
7,000 of them.
Yeah, sure,
and
yeah.
I go. As a matter of fact,
great.
In the next issue of Delirium magazine, I write a column called "Ladies of the '80s."
Nice.
And Cynthia, I interviewed Cynthia
Awesome.
in it, and so, but no, she's a doll. I've done like 4 movies with her.
love
She's
her.
a doll,
Cool.
and she loves to do this kind of stuff. So you guys should.
Oh,
definitely-
please.
She's
Yeah.
a doll. She
Yes.
looks like $1 million. I mean, for a
Oh,
woman
nice.
who's done as many movies, I said, "Have you ever been injured?" She goes, "The only time I was ever injured is I was waiting. I was in Asia. I was like China or something, and we got rear-ended on a car waiting doing this." Really? And did you fall like 7 stories from like a building with Jackie Chan? So that,
awesome.
and then I did another film called 666 Teen Warlock.
I want to see
with
that.
with Hillary Shepard from Power Rangers and Jason Font from Power
nice.
Rangers. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, but those are the 4 titles coming out October 1st, and I've got a new aggregator. Now our footprint at Rapid Heart. The footprint for Rapid Heart is 109 countries now, which is great for video on demand. We're on every platform, and day and date, because piracy. You got to release it day and date. The studios have got to realize this. It's got to come out everywhere at the same time. Otherwise, it's going to be stolen.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's what I did, and so we'll see how I do. If I do well, then I'm out of the movie business. I'm going to be directing another Lifetime movie.
You'll always find something.
You'll always have a place here.
With,
Thank you.
Always going
Thank
to
you.
be here, David.
No, but it's been.
Always.
Thank you.
Thank God David's here to set us straight here. That's
Believe me, I'm here to set you guys straight.
But speaking of exploitation, since that is
speaking of it.
Speaking of, just lean back, zip it up. I executive produce a series for the Full Moon streaming channel called Haunted Hollywood, and it's hosted by the delectable David Del Valle.
That's me.
all right.
And
He's here.
and he happens to be here right now. And sober. And David, tell
Please
us.
quit pretending I'm not here.
David, tell us a little bit. No, I know. We all know you're here.
No, you fucking don't.
Now tell us a little bit about
Tell us about the show.
the exploitation elements of Haunted Hollywood.
Well, I'll tell you, they're widespread.
Now you can lean towards the penis-looking thing.
Yeah. Own it.
First of all, I just wanted to say that I'm totally in agreement with you guys about one thing.
Just one?
Yeah, just one.
At least we got that.
Yeah, but believe me, you're lucky to get one. I think that horror is here to stay.
Yeah.
But not in the way that you envision it.
Okay.
Okay.
You know
Blow our
why?
minds.
Well, no, I don't have to blow in.
Okay,
yeah, Matt.
enough about Haunted Hollywood. Thank you very much, David Del Valle. I tried to give you 30 seconds here, and you fuck it up. So much for that pitch.
Wow.
Jesus Christ. Give this queen a minute. And anyway, so then she'll get started on her Mae West stories. Talk about exploitation.
We
haven't said anything yet.
Wait a second. Is that Barbara Steele?
I was just about to say.
What is Barbara
we need
Steele
Barbara
doing here?
Steele here.
I thought I've just come in to say one thing to you guys. I can't understand why you enjoy me so much because are we necrophiles? Are we so wrapped up in the dead that we can't understand each other?
Wait a second. Is that Peter Lorre coming from the grave right now?
Well, I think it might be because I don't understand you. I can't live with you. Why do you live this way? I can't stand it.
But Peter, wait a second. Is that Boris Karloff over there?
I don't know. It's so alone. You know something, Sarah? I gave you the house in Tahoe. Can't you just live there?
Jesus, from beyond the grave with David Del Valle.
Oh, David. Wow.
Man.
Sorry to occupy your show, guys. It's all yours now.
Yeah.
Ask me questions. Ask me more questions.
Wow, that was like the
I asked
Jonathan
one
Winters.
question, and 45 minutes later, I finally shut the fuck up.
No, that's fantastic.
The Jonathan Winters of horror.
Yeah.
Just now.
What about the
Nice.
Jonathan Fred of horror?
Yeah, probably more on point. Yeah.
Well, David, I want to ask you though, as far as now of course,
This David, not your David.
No, actually,
David Wood, not David
both
Squared.
Davids.
You want both Davids?
Both Davids. Okay.
David DeCOTEAU, when you were making the films in the 80s and 90s,
Was that you?
but horror now is so hip and mainstream. It wasn't like that when you were making Creepozoids and
Right.
I mean, has it been diluted? Like everybody's making horror films now, and everybody thinks they like and thinks
Take
they
sort of the
know
cool
horror.
off of it
Like,
a little bit.
what is different now?
Well, I haven't seen any of the Insidious or the Conjuring. I haven't seen any of those
It's a
things.
particular style that is popular
I'm not
now.
into that. I mean, I just don't go to movies anymore. Actually, I just watch documentaries. I'm an old man, so I just can't stand most of what's being made. But when it comes to a Hills Have Eyes reunion, I'm the first one in line to see that.
We were there too.
We were there too.
Yeah.
God, that was a great panel.
That was
that
a great
amazing?
panel, and first of all, that's a great movie.
It is.
that's
That never was
fantastic.
properly distributed because when it came out, I saw when it opened in Portland in '78, it came out on the bottom of a double bill with Tourist Trap.
Really?
Wow.
So no one ever knew what this movie was. So we saw Tourist Trap, which had posters and advertising.
Right,
And then
yeah.
Hills
Yeah.
Have Eyes.
Fun, but it's not in the same
Not at all,
league.
but
No.
Hills Have Eyes was such an intense, incredible horror movie.
Talk about
Yeah.
exploitation and
That is-
taboo breaking.
David, I saw this with my mom.
Oh my God.
I begged her to take me to this, and she did, and that's how great of a mother. We're talking about our
God bless your
family and
mom.
how great they are.
She's the only woman you can trust, you know. Your mother.
Back to exploitation.
Yes, exactly.
Hills Have Eyes.
So, but the Hills Have, when you look at that movie, it's like, why wasn't this movie a huge hit, like Halloween style
Well, it was
hit?
a huge
No,
hit,
it
wasn't it?
wasn't.
Well, not at the time.
No, not at the time.
No,
No,
it
it
was
wasn't.
not. It was not.
David Squared, not at the time.
And it finally came around. Then the VHS,
Yeah.
and then the DVD, and now this beautifully remastered Blu-ray.
Yes.
But you look at just the energy of that film.
It's so
and
raw and
and it's
so
so
real.
raw, and it's from Wes Craven. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just now I was there opening night on Hollywood Boulevard for Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And when I looked at the movie, I said, "Who the fuck is Johnny Depp?" But after that,
And now you're like, please go away.
Wes had him in a little cutoff shirt, little hot pants, and I was like, "Whoa, go
yeah.
Wes!"
See?
Yeah. Anyway, so
He loves you.
But but the movie, the audience was packed, but they kind of laughing at the beginning, and then about halfway through, they kind of got into it,
Right.
and then. The final act was like great. I miss those theatrical in the audience kind of like
Like discoveries.
Yeah, it's just like
Yeah.
that with no preamble, with literally no prep. No, you go in
Right,
going, "What is
right.
this?" Like I said, when I saw opening night of Halloween,
Right.
no one knew what this movie was until it's unleashed upon you.
There's
and
no
it's
such
incre-
thing anymore. Everybody's so hip to everything.
Exactly.
I would argue that there are a few movies that have done that, at least for me. Like, I walked into The Descent without knowing anything about it, and I think that's a great movie and shot really well. All-female cast, very strong female characters,
It's a good one, yeah.
and it really threw me for a loop. And I thought this was really different. Now, granted, it's not Nightmare on Elm Street different, but every once in a while those movies get through. But what happens is that then the market is just saturated with
Right.
a copy
Yeah.
of
But
But you see,
everything
but
else.
isn't that that's the way of exploitation? I mean, what happens
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
So,
Right.
so
Yeah.
if there is some kind of sexy erotic dream movie, oh my gosh! But then everyone jumps on the bed. We got to do a sexy erotic dream movie, you know? I mean,
Right.
and you keep flooding the market.
But what's weird is everybody complained about Blair Witch Project.
No,
everyone complained about how it was not as scary as we were told it was, and like
It was the perfect exploitation movie.
Wait a minute.
perfect,
Perfect.
Yes,
Yeah.
and copied a gazillion times after
Exactly.
that.
times.
That's exactly what the Blair Witch Project was pure exploitation, because they had this whole thing. This is found footage.
Yeah.
Have you
This is the
seen these
real
kids?
stuff.
The whole
Yeah.
marketing campaign
Was brilliant.
was-
Brilliant.
It
I was-
almost surpassed
David,
the
I was
film.
fooled.
Exactly.
I was fooled. I mean, I thought it. I mean, they did a great job on it. I mean,
Right.
and it was a frightening.
I miss-
and
I
actually,
miss those-
I don't know. I mean, I think Sean and I, I mean, when I saw it, it was on a VHS.
Right,
You know.
so-
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That
As
was
you should
early.
see
okay.
it.
Yeah, but again, it's those. So when you define exploitation, is it the filmmaker or is it the distributor? What really defines
Right.
exploitation? How do you sell this picture?
The
Is it
ballyhoo.
How do you define what are the exploitable elements to sell? How do you decide what the key art is and what stills to use and
Right.
how to do a little bit of preamble or a little bit of
Right.
sort of prepping of the sending, because you always want to get the marketing going and everything.
Sure.
Exploitation.
I miss like the old crude kind of exploitation days, or like I remember like for Dr. Butcher MD, they had this like flatbed
Oh,
truck,
that was so
and they were
long
like doing
ago.
a scene in the back of a flatbed truck. They're amputating an arm.
Then you got to go back
Driving around New
to
York
you got to go
doing
back to
that.
William Castle. Then,
Yeah.
which is-
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Like-
Exactly. Which was
Let's not
pure
go back that
exploitation.
far.
No,
Right.
let's.
Yeah.
'cause
And
he-
by the way, the Tingler played a very important part in my wedding.
Yeah.
and also that's
would
John
love to
Water.
know how
That
that
John Water says that's the greatest movie ever made. By the way,
Oh,
too.
he's the greatest.
He's
He
right.
really is,
Straight
and
jacket.
one of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah.
Is that-
yeah.
No, because it's pure exploitation.
Pure.
And so when you're talking about exploitation, it's like, is it the filmmaker? It's maybe back in the day it was the producer. The producer really was the
Yes.
visionary behind his movie, and he worked with the distributor and did all
Yeah.
this crazy stuff where he
Like
would
Jerry
show the
Jerry
caskets.
Gross putting
exactly.
I Eat Your Skin with I Drink Your Blood together.
Yeah,
You know?
but then the trailer is just shots from I Eat Your Skin.
right.
There's
that's
nothing
right.
from the from the black and white.
Oh no,
Go-ahead.
I
Yes.
Drink Your Blood.
I Drink Your Blood.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
right, because the black and white
good
one
movie,
was
yeah.
terrible.
Exactly.
Right, that's right.
Exactly. Which
One
is
of my favorites of all time. By
Well,
the
Jerry
way.
Gross,
Yeah.
God bless his soul. who died penniless in an apartment. Died.
No.
Really?
No, that's exactly what happened. And because I know one of the people that put him in the grave. And it was like, he was then there's 6 days. I mean, this guy, when he opened Zombie, I worked in the movie theaters when he opened Zombie. And that poster.
Oh, my God.
Yep.
What is it? What was
We
it?
are going to eat you.
With that face. And it was all filled. The entire one sheet was filled with that face.
I remember that.
Talk
It
about
was
in your
so
face.
shameless.
Yeah, it
and
was.
so perfect for
Yeah,
that
it
movie
was.
because that movie was over the top.
Yes, yeah.
And so
Yeah,
we
well, you
did-
got a zombie eating a shark.
Yeah, exactly. But again,
Pretty
it's-
awesome.
Well, what was great about the movie is that the zombies didn't appear in Act 3. They were there from the first reel. I mean, it was like
Yes.
the whole thing.
Finally.
And there was not a single joke in it. It's so
Right, it was-
mean-spirited.
yeah.
It was just
grimy
so
and-
grimy and,
well,
dirty
yeah.
and amazing.
But it's still one of the most effective zombies to me. They truly look like dead bodies just shuffling around. And,
Right.
Shuffling around zombies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
The way it should
It's a
be.
way of doing a zombie movie.
It's the way it should be done.
Hey, remember back in the day, is the studios when the moguls quit, they hired theater exhibitors to run the studios, like Spiros Skouros and all those people. They wanted those people who knew how to sell a picture and exploit them properly.
Right.
So that's why they had people like
Walter Reed.
Walter Reed. Exactly, he had his own theater chain. So
Could I say something about The Hills Have Eyes? Because during the panel that was done at Monsterpalooza, there was some talk about comparing the original to the remake.
Yeah.
And what always gets me about the remake is that the remakes are always too slick. All of a sudden now they have all this makeup and everything, and what's
Yeah,
so
the latex.
great about
Visual
the
effects,
all this
yeah.
kind of stuff. And what I loved about the original is that instead of getting makeup, they got weird looking guys.
Yeah.
and they had them speak in a weird way, and that did it. That sold it.
Michael Berryman is on the frickin' poster, for
Yeah.
God's sakes.
Right.
And that
Perfect.
is so frightening.
Even the producer, Peter Locke,
yeah.
his role as Mercury, he's got like 3 lines, and he makes a little joke like, I made a little joke about eating the toes. And I remember that, like, to this day, like, that is the creepiest guy ever.
Well, it was like they cast real people doing that. That movie was kind of
Yes.
like a docudrama because
Yeah.
it was so
Yeah.
real and handheld, and you were like right there, and you go. And then it was just also one of those things where you go, this filmmaker is not following any rules. And there's a moment it's coming up where we better work out because this guy ain't following anybody's
Yeah.
rules.
Right,
Because
right.
it's so
Yeah.
in your face and over the top.
You're literally
He
on the
will
edge of your
fuck you
seat.
up.
Yeah.
He will kill everyone you love.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's that's kind of how I felt when I first saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I was just about to say, a perfect
absolutely.
double feature,
Yeah.
because they really do feel like they occupy the same universe.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, well, obviously it's Tobe Hooper's best film, but I think, but it's also technically really well made, but it's also this,
Very.
and I use this, I kind of overuse this phrase, a fever dream. The movie's like a little nightmare in itself.
Yes.
And it's just in its style, and it's just
The
like
sounds, the soundtrack.
sounds, the soundtrack, the acting, it's just a real fever dream kind of movie, and you kind of watch it 3 a.m. and it's its own world. It's so
Absolutely.
brilliant, that film. And a lot of people,
Shot
it's so
for shot.
Yeah, it's not that bloody. Actually,
not.
No,
not
there's
a-
very little blood in it.
Well,
But
I mean, if you remember The Hills Have Eyes, as I do, with Michael Berryman, you remember that Michael was friendly with wolves. He collected wolves. Wolves would come to him.
Is that right?
He
Really?
possessed wolves. And they came to him, and they were his friends, and he lived in a trailer park, and he had a girlfriend.
I know, about the girlfriend.
What you guys miss is The Hills Have Eyes is based on an old Scottish myth.
That's true. That is true.
No, it's about
yeah.
a group of cannibals that lived in a cave
Yeah.
that lived off this Scottish thing in 1849.
Yeah.
Now,
That is actually true.
Well,
I know.
exactly. I know
We all know
about
this.
it.
Actually, I
Some of
did
our
not.
people
Actually,
don't.
I did
Yeah.
not know that.
Because it wasn't part of the exploitation of the film in the poster in DR.
Based on
Based
Just
on
the
a
topic,
Scottish
by the way.
myth.
Okay, there we go.
movie-
Anyways, moving on. Moving on to wolves that are being. Anyway,
If you love Scottish folklore,
If you like haggis,
we all remember the 1849 story of wrong.
based on
We
a
are going to
woodcutting,
eat you. Is really what the exploitation should be.
I don't know what you guys. You guys just have to wake up and smell the marijuana.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's I think maybe a little too much of that on your part. Oh, fuck you. Well, fuck you.
okay.
All right.
Bullshit.
Exploitation.
Bullshit was the exploitation.
Well,
At least you're on topic now.
Oh, well, that case, let's talk about your career.
We already did. Where have you been sleeping?
Oh my God, was that it? All right, boys.
Well, since we're not plugging Haunted Hollywood.
Well, no, let's just talk about everybody.
No, but the thing is, if you're looking at exploitation, you got to think of Dave Friedman.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course, yeah.
Who was
wow.
And then you look at my dear friend Frank Henenlotter's movie, that's Sexploitation, which is now out on DVD through Something Weird, which is brilliant.
Yes.
And it's interesting because, not that I'm trying to wrap this around back to my particular genre, but I am. But it's interesting is that David Friedman always says the topic always has to be a taboo. And it's always been about every taboo except homosexuality. Oh. And he's finally asked that question. By Frank Henenlotter. Why didn't you touch on that subject? And he says that's the one area we could never get a booking for, because if I could make a film like that and get a booking, I would have fucking made it.
Right, sure.
Because Dave Friedman was all about sales.
But at that time, it just wasn't.
And there were some imports, some interesting oddball little films that had a little gay twist to them, films like Satan's Children and films like that were these crazy movies.
Well, Human Centipede has at least the back two are women to woman. So technically,
a little before Dave Friedman, a little after Dave Friedman. But
that's
true. Dave Friedman was the king of exploitation.
Yes, he really was. I mean,
he was the king, and also Roger Corman. I mean, when he was making those hillbilly pictures with the race cars and stuff that I fucking loved, those films did very, very well in the South. But what was also interesting is after Deep Throat, people have said, well, after Deep Throat, pornography became legal. Well, it became legal in maybe 4 states. There was also the rest of the country that needed to play nurse pictures and stewardess pictures,
and
movies like that. Exactly,
movies like Gator Bait,
or Pom Pom Girls, and that's where Crown International said,
"That's where you boys."
We can't book Deep Throat into a drive-in, but we can book Pom Pom Girls, because the major cities could sneak their hardcore in there. So it was never really.
It was titillation.
It was titillation all the way well into the 80s.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, So pornography theaters became prevalent nationwide, but those pictures, those Crown International pictures, gangbuster business back
they were
then.
all over.
I mean, when we would play them, I would play Pom Pom Girls like 4 years after it was released at the drive-in, and we'd still have standing room Pom Pom Girls. What red-blooded American male is not going to get in line at the drive-in to go see that motherfucking thing?
Everybody wants a Pom Girl.
You know what? You have a point.
An idiotic point, but one.
But once in a while, Crown International would put a bunch
Crown
of
International.
But yes, speaking of exploitation, that's the topic today.
That was Dracula's dog.
No, it was Dracula's dog, which is great exploitation.
Oh my God, I love that movie.
I would agree.
Everyone loved it.
David, do you have to talk though about a movie that I love, and actually I think was on the DVD. You're on the DVD, one of the extras talking about it because you love it so much. And this was an early Charles Band movie, which is kind of a cross between a killer car movie and The Exorcist, called Crash.
Well, Crash changed my life.
Crash made him famous.
Crash was the directorial debut of Charles Band, who had only made one movie prior to that as a producer, a film called Mansion of the Doom. We don't really talk about
Richard Basehart.
About Last Foxtrot in Burbank, but we do talk about Mansion of the Doom, which is actually a really good movie directed by Michael Pataki.
Lance Hendrickson.
Introducing Lance Hendrickson. Stan Winston did the effects on that.
Wow, it's gruesome.
But Charlie wanted, it was a really, really
Crash?
great movie. But no, that was Mansion of the Doom.
Mansion of the Doom.
But then Crash, see what happens, Universal was going to basically do a movie, Jaws on Wheels, which was called The Car with James Brolin.
Oh, well, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Now, this was also the kind of thing where all those exhibitors around the country and exchange houses said, look, we need car chase movies. I mean, Smokey and the Band, all these things. This was
so popular.
it was all about car crashes.
Right.
So Charlie, my old boss and my buddy, said, well, maybe I could just, he likes horror and he likes comic books. So he said, maybe I'll just do a car crash movie with a possessed car. Kind of like that movie that Universal's making right now. And maybe I can get it out before then. So he called it Akaza, Demon of the whatever.
Yeah, because there's like a little idol.
The movie doesn't make a lick of sense. But I went to this movie at the Rosemoyer Theater, which is sacred ground to me, the Rosemoyer Theater, because it was a sixplex, which was huge, but it had no velvet rope, so they almost encouraged you to go see all 6 movies. Because it was in Gresham, Oregon. You had to make a drive, but it was brand new. It always smelled new, and the projection booth was like in a deck above the candy counter. You could see the projectors.
Oh, that's
Looks
cool.
like heaven.
Yeah, it was just right. Yeah, it was heaven for me. Never a line. Always.
Oh.
So you'd see a poster like Dracula's dog, and you'd look at it and go, if there's a God, why can't this movie be playing right now? Because you saw the poster for Dracula's dog. There's no greater movie in the world. How bad can it be?
The idea was right in front of us all the time.
Exactly. Oh my God, the corpse grinders? Oh man, how bad can it be?
They're waiting to be grinded.
So I saw this movie, the poster for Crash, and I was just like staggering. Just like, this is going to be the greatest movie. It opened the next week. I went. I was the only one in the theater. It was like I always went to the cheap matinees the next morning. I never went on Friday night because I was
Right.
Yeah, I went Saturday morning, Sunday morning.
It's cheaper too.
It's cheaper, and I was a kid. I was 15 or whatever it was. And I went to see it, and it was in scope too. So the masking was widened out, and I was just like, another Andy Davis cinematography job. And I was really into cars. Then I had a 69 Chevelle Malibu. I was very much into the Eat My Dust and Crazy Mamas. And I see this movie, and I still don't know what this movie's about. But it was nonstop car crashes and John Carradine and Jose Ferrer and Sue Lyon.
And they repeat the car crashes and they do them in slow motion. And it's crazy.
I have not seen this. I gotta do this.
It's out on DVD. We finally found the original CRI print, which is the print from the original negative. We found it at Deluxe. So we kind of snuck in and kind of snuck out with it. And he scanned it to 2K. It's beautiful. And because I always talked about Crash. Like when I was doing Crash and Burn, I was producing, Charlie was the director, and I'd drive him to set. And I go, now, Charlie, on Crash, that one scene I would always talk about. He goes, would you shut the fuck up about fucking Crash? That movie, I can't live this fucking movie down. So he said, would you stop? I go, Charlie, it's the greatest movie ever made. It's the greatest movie ever made. Because it's so insane.
It's very entertaining. It's never boring.
It's never boring, and it's car crashes, and then zooming into the eyes. The eyes glow. The idol shows up. John Carradine.
There's a dog attack.
Dobermans everywhere.
Oh,
attacking people.
Doberman exploitation. That was a whole separate thing.
The cars are possessed, and it's fucking awesome. So I always brought it up. So we found it. We released it. I go, Charlie, you got to put this on DVD or Blu-ray. So I decided I wanted to, because I saw it. So first time I saw Charles Band's name on the big screen, it was very memorable. I said, who's this guy? And I said, we're going to put it on a DVD. And so I decided I was going to moderate the audio commentary. But being the mega fucking nerd I am, it was my birthday, and Charlie's like wants to take me out for my birthday, and we go to, he likes Musso and Frank. He likes old Hollywood stuff and everything like that and stuff. So we were talking, and he goes, well, happy birthday and everything. And I brought a little something for him, and he brought me the little idol. Oh. He found it in his warehouse.
Because this idol is like hanging from the car keys.
Exactly. And he hangs on the keys still. The keys were still on it. It's all rusted.
Do you still have it?
I sure do.
Of course.
Wow.
But this is after collecting the 3-sheet, the 6-sheet, the French import, the I'm a Crash completist.
Wow.
So because,
and this is coming out?
It's out now.
It's out now.
It's
Okay.
great. That's how I saw David on the DVD.
Being the big nerd, I'm part of this thing called Trailers from Hell.
Oh,
I don't know if you've ever seen them. I'm a guru, and I introduce some of them. And I said, well, I really like to do Crash. And Joe Dante says, I have the trailer to Crash. I said, you fucking have the trailer to Crash? And he goes, yeah, I have it in 35, but it's all pink. And I go, give me the goddamn trailer. Give me the goddamn trailer. I'm going to go. So I took it to some lab out in Chatsworth. We rescanned the trailer, put the color back in, and it's all beautifully done. But it's like a 4.5 minute trailer. Like all the great stuff's in the trailer. I go, what the fuck was Group 1 thinking? Anyway, so I do the intro for it, Crash for it, and I talk and I narrate it. I go, God, this little trailer needs a documentary. So, being the fucking nerd I am, I would watch this car chase, and when the cars would drive by an intersection, I would freeze frame on the intersection, and I would see the name of the street sign, the cross streets, and then I Googled the cross streets. And I found the locations they shot the movie in 1977.
God.
That's how big of a nerd I am.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So I went out, and so I found about 5 or 6 different locations. And I went with a crew, and we went back to those locations and tried to find the shots that were similar to the one in the movie. And then I would be on camera saying, in this scene, this is where the car crashes into that house, but the house is still there, but there's now a fence. And so it's the mega nerd fucking making of.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how many times I'm just on Hollywood and there's a bus going, we're doing Crash tours. Get on board.
No, but that sounds great. I mean, I love that stuff.
I'm totally there.
And I tell you, Charlie goes, David, I hope more more than just you buys this DVD. And I said, well, I think it'll do okay.
It isn't that well known, really. Still.
No, because it never came out on VHS.
Right. Okay. Right. That's true.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. That is weird.
It somehow, Group One, they never put their stuff out on VHS because Brandon Chase, the owner, who became a friend of mine in the 80s, actually, said that these movies are worth $300,000 each for VHS. I go, Brandon, that's never going to happen. You know, if you flip them for $100,000, you're way ahead.
Yeah.
And so he never put them out on VHS, many of them. And so they never came out on VHS, except they came out as an exclusive in Photomat stores. I don't know if you remember that Photomat, before the video rental store, Photomats had a special video section where you could buy a movie for $100 on VHS.
No.
And beta.
I don't remember that.
No,
And
$100.
I found all those catalogs, those Photomat catalogs on eBay, and I bought them all. It's really ridiculous. And Group One put them out through Photomat exclusively. There would be like, you go to Photomat to develop your stuff, and you'd see like 10 movies to choose from.
Crash.
And there's like 10 movies like from Group One. Like, what is that, Lucio Fulci, the psychic?
Oh, yeah.
That was one of them.
Jennifer O'Neill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they would have, these little, but it was all through Photomat.
Wow.
Because there was like 10,000 Photomats
Like a
out there.
little blip in the VHS history.
$100 or
Wow, I had
$99.
no idea.
I had no idea.
It was the beginning of the actual VHS before the rental market. It was the self,
Right.
but it was $99 crazy dollars for something.
God.
So are these VHSs going for big bucks on eBay now?
I think so. It's if you go Photomat, VHS, original kiosk or whatever,
Right,
you'll see
right.
some of the old history about it.
Okay, here's a movie that I've always wanted to see. I've heard about it. I've heard it's good. I kind of enjoy a revenge fantasy if it's done well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a movie called The Farmer. Does anyone know?
I don't know that movie.
Not at
Anybody?
all.
This is-
I've seen
don't know
trailers
it at
for it.
all.
I think
Yeah,
maybe
it's
like,
all-
maybe like a Code Red
What
release
year?
or something.
Yeah,
Oh, is that
it's
like
it's
the Olsen brothers?
yeah.
What year?
It's about the 70s.
Yeah, it
it's
was 70s.
And it's this guy who like loses
1977.
the bank is foreclosing on his farm, and so somehow he gets involved with helping a mob guy. Even I have on 16 a little TV trailer of it.
Wow.
And it
And-
stars Gary Conway. From
Gary Conway from
I
Land
Was
of
a
the
Teenage
Giants,
Frank-
yeah.
When I was a teenage
Is
Frankenstein.
this Gary Conway when he was very young?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
77.
Yeah.
Because I remember Barn of the Naked Dead.
Oh, yes.
I had
Andrew
to
Prime.
cry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's
That's a
I
long
love and everything.
Talk about exploitation. It's a great. I
Well,
love that
there
title.
you are.
But there's a lot of those regional, that might have been a regional, it may have been an LA production, but there's a lot of those regional movies made, especially in the South, usually in Florida, where there were motion picture labs. And these drive-ins were lines around the block, and these fucking local entrepreneurs would go,
Right.
we could make a fucking pom-pom girl, we could make a farmer, we could
Yeah.
do
Right.
a...
Yeah.
And they would,
Yeah.
and it would be a regional movie.
You
and
never
they,
saw them usually anywhere else.
They made 10 prints, and they just stayed in the South.
Right,
And so,
right.
I mean, that's what was his name, Bogey Creek?
Oh, yes.
Legend
Charles
of
Pierce.
Charles Pierce, that's
Legend
what he
of Boggy
did.
Creek was like a huge hit.
Yeah, he did 10 prints, put them in the back of his pickup truck, and went through the entire South and just booked it.
That's crazy.
Would four-wall these drive-ins, and he made a fortune. Then the film was picked up by AIP and released.
Who
to
did
rest
The
of
Witchmaker?
That was the same guys who did
Alvy Moore.
Brotherhood of Satan. Yeah.
That was L.Q. Jones.
L.Q. Jones.
L.Q.
and Alvy
Jones,
Moore.
right.
Yeah.
Yes,
Jones
yeah.
made a fortune.
Yeah.
Well,
And I'm gonna tell
Witchmaker's
you
great.
something. The Witchmaker had more accurate witchcraft and stuff.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. Well, a boy and his dog.
and
I
the
mean,
Brotherhood
Boy
of
and his
Satan
dog.
with
Brotherhood of
Yes.
Satan's pure
Great,
fun.
creepy, disturbing movie.
strange movies that just didn't really. Something happened with those movies. They just never had their due.
They were all set in a swamp.
But they were always very thoughtful, and they didn't have that sort of like when I want to see a movie about Satan, I wanted to see Race with the Devil. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you very much. It's
Exactly.
one of my favorite movies of all time.
And it's the greatest television spot ever created for a motion picture.
Yes.
Oh.
When you were a kid and you saw that fucking car, the truck
Yes.
drive over the exploding, I mean, I'm going.
It's got everything
And
that
got
you want.
everything you want.
tagline is, if you're going to race with the devil, you better be
That's
faster
where
than
Laura-
hell.
and also has very genuine creepy moments.
Great moments.
Great cast.
Like when they come upon the ritual,
Yeah.
or when
Laura Parker loses her poodle.
Yes.
Yes.
or in the swimming pool in the trailer park, and everyone
yeah.
is looking at her.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. No, that was like a perfect. That's when 20th Century Fox would make exploitation films.
Yes.
Because there was a time when these major studios were not doing the best business, and they go,
Right.
"Fuck this! We're going to make Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry."
Yeah, The Devil's
This is the
Reign.
people that brought you Cleopatra. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's just like, really? Is that what you're going to do?
Right.
Well, they did great business.
Yeah,
And
so
talk
good.
about for a nickel. and
Yeah.
making a good amount of money,
That
which
was
you
a
could
good-
do now,
that was a
except
good-
they wouldn't be real crashes.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But that's,
It would all be
you're right.
CGI.
That was a time where the majors were actually
Into the exploitation
dipping
business.
into the exploitation area. Yeah, which
Total
was great.
drive. So I mean, even if you look at United Artists, they were doing stuff like that early on. But then you look at the major studios; they would release films like not the Haunting of Hell House. What's the one with Roddy McDowell?
Legend.
Legend of
Yeah,
Hell
Legend of
House.
Hell
I mean, that's an exploitation movie, you know.
Yeah,
totally.
James Nicholson died right after that. That's that
well,
whole company
yeah.
ended.
But that's when he went from AIP, the kink of
To- that was
exploitation,
his
to,
Right.
this,
Yeah.
to Fox because they needed guys
Academy
like that.
Pictures, I think.
Yeah.
it's called.
But that was a nice little blending of an exploitation film and a kind of classy gothic haunted house movie.
Well, which was very interesting is that director directed both that and Dirty Mary Crazy Larry the same year.
Oh my god!
Which is the weirdest. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like Victor Fleming. He directed Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind in the same year.
Yep, that's
Not a
right.
bad year. No, not a bad year for
Not at
Victor
all.
Fleming.
Well, no, wait. David and I both have to, with Charles Band and Full Moon Entertainment, let you guys know that we have resurrected Hollywood Horror House with Miriam Hopkins and Gail Sondergaard, which is a movie that was called Savage Intruder, which was lost. It was a movie that just fell through the cracks that Avco Embassy put out a long time ago.
Really?
And I asked Charlie, I said, you know what, when we did the Hollywood Haunted series, I said, okay, there's a movie that I'm really strongly championing, and it's Miriam Hopkins. It's a movie that's very much like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, but it's
Wow.
like if Whatever Happened to Baby Jane stayed in a Motel 6.
Right?
And so...
What year?
I looked up. It's 1970. 70. It looks like.
78, 79. Anyway, Charlie trusted me, and he allowed us to put this out. So through Full Moon, we
Awesome.
have Savage Intruder available on DVD for the first time in 35 years.
Wow.
And I put it out, and I put out a whole commentary for it, and I take responsibility of the fact that we don't have a good print, but what we have is watchable. And
Awesome.
I want you guys to look at it.
Absolutely,
And,
immediately.
and
I
more
love
than
finding
that, I
old-
want you, if you like it, help us get to the point where we can find a better print of it and put it out.
You got it.
in a
Yeah.
in a 2K 4K transfer. Charlie was very smart to let us do this because the movie would have fallen through the cracks.
Is there a movie, just to ask this question, because there's some like Crash. I mean, there's movies that I kind of love.
Well,
and
you
people
felt
go,
the same way about that.
Yeah, but what the fuck is that movie? Has there been over the years, and we're all basically of the same vintage, maybe I'm a little
Yes.
older
Yeah.
than all
We're
of
all.
you.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty close.
We're all old.
But it's like with a movie that you saw when you were younger and it never got its due, but it was always a very memorable movie that kind of either creeped you out or was just memorable. And it's always there was a woman in it that you fell in love with, or there's an actress or something about it that just stayed with you. Do you guys have any examples of that type of
There's
film?
probably a few
That's a
like
good
that.
question.
But,
Right off the bat, and it's funny how it's like when something is cult and then it becomes mainstream, and that
Right.
would be Cronenberg for me. And the very first time, once again, a film that I saw with my mother, Shivers or It Came From Within. Yeah, with the great Barbara Steele. And I remember as a kid watching that and being so disturbed, delighted, and just mesmerized by this crazy, weird
Crazy movie.
world
Yeah.
that was created. And that thing, oh my God. I mean, like the moment where the worm goes out of, and I can't remember the name of the actress, but from Barbara Steele.
Lynn Lowry.
That was Lynn Lowry.
That's right,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
One
Lynn
of her
Lowry.
great moments.
What, and I see that in my dreams. Like it's that embedded into my psyche.
Yeah, there's a lot of those Canadian movies, especially that one which was shot during
Is See No Evil Canadian?
No. Mm-mm. But that was shot during a cold Montreal winter, and it just have that overcast and that gloominess.
Yeah, totally.
Same thing with his film, A Rabid.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Same
I
kind
also
of
saw that with my mom.
gloomy and snowy and wet
Yeah.
and
Well,
cold.
your
and
mother went out to some weird
We
movie.
were a pair.
Well, what's great about those movies too is you, with the exception of Barbara Steele and Lynn Lowry, you didn't know any of these people, so there was no
Right,
preconceived. It was like, is this
is this real?
Is this real?
That was
Yeah.
the first time I think I ever saw Lynn Lowry. And immediately fell in love
When
with
would
her.
you have ever seen her before that?
Well, she was working for Radley Metzger prior to that.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, boy, I wish I would have saw that first.
Any other examples?
I mean, like definitely, like I would just watch stuff late night TV all the time. You know, there was one which you guys probably know about. It was called Bloodbath.
No, never
from the '60s. It was Jack Hill and
of course, that was with William. What's his name?
William Campbell.
William
The one that was
Campbell,
done in like 17 other movies.
Do you realize
Stephanie
there are
Rothman.
5 discs from Arrow? I just got it this morning.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah. And they
Because
released
my
a
friend
deluxe
Peter Beckman worked
Blu-ray
on that.
of- yeah.
No, I mean it's like all right. It was a movie that Roger Corman made in Yugoslavia,
Yeah.
and hoped to God it would just get forgotten. But instead, now there is a DVD with 5
And
discs.
it has that weird kind of
Operation Titian.
Yes, it has that weird Dementia 13 feel to
Well,
it.
no, it has a a deliberate.
Yeah, it was very and also
Because everybody from Dementia 13 went over there to make some money.
right. And talk about like actresses that like stuck with me. It was Laurie Saunders, who was just drop dead gorgeous. She was later in a
Luana Anders.
No,
no,
Luana
Luana Anders
never
too,
did.
but
okay.
Laurie Saunders, who was
I don't
in
know who Laurie
Petticoat
Saunders is.
Junction.
Was she in
was in
Petticoat Junction.
Wait a minute, was
Yeah.
Laurie Saunders in Dementia 13?
No, Luana Anders.
Luana
No,
Anders.
I know Luana.
Laurie
was in it.
Saunders is the
So
one.
who
who's
is
kinda like-
Laurie Saunders?
She's the one who's pursued by William Campbell's vampire character.
Oh, well,
yeah.
there
but,
you go.
yeah, so that was the kind of movie that it's that perfect late night TV movie where you're watching it and you don't. Very dreamlike, and it's the kind of movie where it doesn't always make a lot of sense because it's been recut so many times. But
Right.
it's
Well,
still
who
has
knew
an
it would wind
effect.
up in a
yeah.
deluxe
And
box
Bucket of
fucking
Blood
set?
is another one that I
Which
like.
one?
Bucket of Blood,
Right.
which is one of those
Well,
ones
that's
that
ancient Roger Corman.
yeah, but which was supposed to be kind of like it's sort of billed as kind of a comedy, but like I remember the end scene of that where all his victims come back to get him, and I'm like, this is not
still
funny.
creepy, yeah.
This is scary.
Any other examples?
See, for me, it's more.
Woody Allen?
I collected soundtracks and film scores, and for me, the stuff that's yet unreleased is more about film scores that I wish would be released.
Right.
There's an Italian composer named Pino Donaggio who had done a lot of Brian De Palma movies, who I really like, and he had done some stuff in Italy. One of them, a movie called Whisper in the Dark. Gorgeous score. Never came out. You mentioned Twilight Time Blu-ray earlier.
Well, I work for Twilight Time.
And they're great about releasing films with isolated scores.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
they
That's
specialize in that.
You know, we're doing one. In fact, I'm doing one Friday for Shelley Winters that is a cannibal film.
Oh,
I've
is that
never fucking heard of. This is the
Is it,
second time. What happened is Twilight Time bought 17 Italian titles, including La Bambino di Satana, that I've already done a commentary for. And now we're doing one called something else with Shelley Winters and Victoria Gossman, who was her husband at the time. It is a cannibal movie where it's based on a real life story. You know, the whole thing with The Hills Have Eyes is based on a real story. So it's like there are these groups of people that lived in caves and things that preyed off people off the road, where the legends of cannibalism and mayhem kind of...
And then you've got Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which
Well,
is, of
that's
course,
fucking
Ed Gein.
Wisconsin that brought
Yeah.
us the wonderful world of Jeffrey Dahmer and Ed Gein.
Yes.
Both from Madison, Wisconsin. How the fuck did Wisconsin
What is going
get
on
two fucking serial killers in one group, in one little part
Just
of
lucky.
town?
Well, the other thing is that television got into the exploitation business. I mean, in the 70s, they were doing women in prison movies, horror movies,
Yes.
Yeah.
They wanted to
haunted
make some
house
fucking
movies.
money.
No, they
Well, if we're
want-
talking about Linda Blair, my
Linda
God,
Blair, Born
Sweet
Innocent.
Hostage, Born Innocent.
Karen Black
I
and all
love that.
that.
That movie holds up today, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of exploitation in television.
On television, I believe Linda Blair gets raped with a broom handle.
Yeah, it was horrible.
That was on TV.
Born Innocent. That was
Yeah.
Born
Born
Innocent.
Innocent. Excuse me.
Yeah, Born
73, no less.
Yeah.
But The
Remember
Night Stalker
that,
with Darren
Lee
McGowan.
Oh, would love
highest
Night
rated
Stalker.
TV movie.
The
at
Night-
the
Which
time.
one?
Night
Oh,
Stalker.
Night Stalker.
Night Stalker to me is the most terrifying television movie ever made because I saw it when I was like 11. But then there's Duel. You know,
Well,
it's just,
Duel.
Yes,
that's
Duel.
talk about
There's
exploitation.
The Night Strangler
Yes.
with,
The Night Strangler, right.
with Richard Anderson.
Right.
Yeah.
The sequel.
You know, you have to realize, I just did a documentary on Dan Curtis.
Oh,
We love him.
Now, you know Dan Curtis is famous for Dark Shadows. Dan
Of
Curtis
course.
is
Yes.
famous.
Trilogy of Terror.
Yeah.
But remember that he did the largest miniseries ever done on ABC.
That's right. That's right.
Called The Winds of War and War and Remembrance. was 27 hours of television,
Insane.
never duplicated.
Yeah.
That is what he should be remembered for. When Sir John Gielgud goes into the oven, there's nothing. I don't think Steven Spielberg, with whatever it was, whatever Jewish...
Schindler's List,
whatever that was, as he always he sugarcoats everything. Dan Curtis's recreation of the Holocaust is definitive.
And to do it then.
And I sat with him. I sat with Dan Curtis when he stood up like Norma Desmond in the screening room with his fist in the air and said, "Fuck Steven Spielberg, that fucker." And he meant it.
Yeah.
And I lived with this man, so I know what he was going through. And he spent millions of dollars with Robert Mitchum and Polly Bergen and everybody else. Sir John Gielgud.
So that's an exploitation miniseries?
Well, if you consider the Holocaust,
well, I'm just saying that was the top.
But no, he was
go about the Holocaust.
He told me when he died, he said, "I will be remembered for Dark Shadows, not for what I've done."
Or Trilogy of Terror. I mean,
that's a nerdy fucking way to look at it. That's what it was.
I've got the Zuni fetish doll upstairs.
But the reality is that's what I remember him for. I never saw War and Remembrance.
That's right.
I don't know anybody.
And David,
I don't know
welcome
anybody
to the
else
Monster Party. That's what it is, my friend.
It's called the Monster Party.
The Monster Party.
Exploitation.
Yes.
But I mean, talk about a golden age of exploitation on TV. I'm so glad that you brought that up because there's so many of those films that we love.
I remember when I was sitting in Dan's office when I looked at him one day and we were talking about Scream of the Wolf, which was a gay werewolf movie, the very first of its kind.
Graves.
Before Teen Wolf, which is so gay you can't even believe it.
Whoa, wait
Everyone
a minute.
on it has come out. Every single actor in that show is gay. Wow. And I will tell you this, when Dan Curtis did Scream of the Werewolf, which was scripted by Richard Matheson,
Right.
I was sitting in his office and I said, "Dan, this movie's really gay because you've got
Richard Boone.
No. You have Clint Walker.
All you have to
You
say.
have Clint Walker propositioning Peter Graves. Come into the woods with me and let's arm wrestle and get rid of your girlfriend.
Can happen.
Get rid of your girlfriend now." And so I said, "That's really gay."
Was that Moon of the Wolf or Scream of the
And
Wolf?
Scream.
Okay.
Moon of the Wolf was Bradford Dillman.
Right.
So
Right.
I do get those confused as well.
How dare you? How dare you?
And there's also
I'm not
Death
through.
Moon.
So in any case,
with Robert Foxworth.
Dan
Werewolf
Curtis
of Woodstock.
watches this. Bob Cobert did the music and everything. So the next day, and I thought, oh, I went too far. So the next day, I walk into Dan's office, and he's got his back. He's got the leather chair and he's turned it. He said, "Yeah, of course, Scream of the Wolf is like, of course, I'm cutting edge. I did like the first gay werewolf thing." And I'm sitting back there going, "Really?" And he turns around and goes, "I'm really cutting edge," And I mean, it was great. No, I love Dan. He was a amazing guy. And Dark Shadows is never equaled. And I'm doing a documentary right now with David Gregory about the making of Dark Shadows, which includes Barbara Steele, Laura Parker,
Awesome.
everybody, John Carlin, they're all in it.
And you mentioned Bob Cobert.
Bob Cobert, who did the music.
Collaboration, he worked with them a lot. They
Yes,
did
he
a lot
did.
of stuff together, and he was awesome.
Yeah, he was.
And
he did both features, House of Dark Shadows and Night of
And
Dark
Winds of
Shadows.
War.
And Night of Dark Shadows is supposed to be hopefully brought out with the 15 minutes that we're missing.
Oh,
That
okay.
include Grayson
Right.
Hall's, whole dykey turn as Miss Danvers, which her dykey husband liked to do. More on that. If you ever want to know about what it was like to be around Sam Hall, just ask me. I will tell you.
That'll be
What
for
was
another
it like
show,
to be around Sam Hall?
Well, it was real gay, let me tell you.
That'll be for our Sam Hall show. I'm going to save that, okay?
We'll do it on the Sam Hall.
Yeah, I want to save that.
I remember when I went to see The Devil's Rain.
Beautiful. Perfect.
Greatest movie ever made.
And talk about a movie that doesn't make a lick of sense.
Except it has Ida Lupino.
But it had the greatest trailer in the world.
Oh,
Yes.
And so I had to see it, and I went to see it, and the movie didn't make a lick of sense. It was in scope to Todd A.O. It was a mess,
fabulous.
but it was back then they always used to open these movies as a double feature. They never just did one,
Right.
Sure.
And the co-hit was a movie that came out of nowhere that kind of disappeared. called Folks at the Red Wolf Inn.
I love that movie.
I don't know this.
I don't know that one.
It's also known as Terror House.
Terror at Red Wolf Inn.
Okay, you guys got to tell me.
Yeah, you have to tell us.
Hit me to this movie.
No, it was a cannibal
What is it about?
film.
Early
This
70s.
This is a movie that is about an elderly couple who run a
Bed and breakfast.
a bed and breakfast where girls come and they chop them up and turn them into dog food, or
No, they just eat them.
They eat them.
They're
They're cannibals.
Red Wolf
Stew.
Inn.
It's just stew? They're made into stew.
But it was
Stew and ribs, if I remember correctly.
it was produced by
ribs.
Michael McCready, who produced the Yorga movies.
Sure.
And
Right.
it starred
George's son.
Son, yeah.
or Arthur Space is in it. Mary, I can't remember who else. And
Mary Jackson.
Linda Gillen, and also speaking of Steven
I haven't,
Spielberg,
no.
Margaret Avery from Color Purple's in
Yes.
it. That's one of her very first roles.
There you are.
The Folks at the Red Wolf Inn. It's a very kind of, it's really smart, funny, creepy as hell.
Yes.
Starring a beautiful young actor named John Nielsen from Shark's Treasure.
Here we go.
And I was like, who the hell is he?
Who is
but
that?
it's this crazy movie that's another one of these fever dreams that's really polished, but then it's kind of creepy and it's cannibalism. Is it funny? Is it not funny? But it was extremely memorable because this kid kills this baby shark on the beach, and it's like this completely out of the blue.
Well, he's like this nice guy that the main character,
yes.
the female lead, is kind of falling for.
Exactly.
He's like this nice kind of farm boy or whatever, but then he does this weird thing out of the blue. And
Freaks
it just
out.
freaks her out.
And it's directed by Bud Townsend, who directed the Alice in Wonderland, a porno version of Alice in Wonderland. He also directed
know it well.
not House of Wax, but the Cameron Mitchell
Oh, Nightmare in Wax.
Nightmare in Wax.
I love
With
it.
Barry Kroger.
Kroger. And
Well, he kills the baby shark,
he kills
and then turns to the girl
and says,
I think I love you.
I think I love you. Exactly.
But what am I so afraid of?
And it's just the strange, and it's a movie I can't get out of my brain.
Well, David, talk about movies that, like that was when I caught on late night TV, because I would always seek this stuff out, and that one criminally has not yet been released on DVD or Blu-ray. Another movie like that is Warlock Moon. It's very similar.
know that
with,
one.
No, there's two. There's the one he's talking about, which is the Terror at Red Wolf Inn, and then there's Welcome to Arrow Beach.
Yes, with Lawrence Harvey.
Before Eric Caden died, he had two dreams. He wanted to see. He had shown Arrow Beach several times, which is Lawrence Harvey's last directorial.
Right, he directed
with
it.
Meg Foster, I think.
Yeah.
And,
he was riddled with cancer when he
yes, he
directed
was.
it.
Yeah, it's a
but
good
he
film, too.
directed that, and the cut version of it misses the point. The uncut
Right.
version, there is a sequence where he opens a meat locker. See, in both films, in
it's known as Tender
Welcome to Arrow
Flesh.
Beach and also the Terror at Red Wolf Inn, which has another title, you have a moment where there's a meat locker and there's a
Yes.
sequence where you see some horrific stuff.
Right.
Otherwise, they're pretty innocuous movies.
But they're very effective in their own weird, low-key way.
Very
I mean,
weird movies that are a part of
They're
like the
very
time
weird.
you see them,
Yes.
and you're not expecting. Another one's movie you never heard of, and it's just unleashed on you, and it's just like, what the hell is
What
this
the fuck
fucking
going
movie?
on?
Yeah.
The film OD.
I love finding stuff like that.
Were you guys, now you guys were not into like the sort of kung fu craze at the time?
What kung fu? What,
I
There was a kung
actually-
fu craze.
was that when kung fu fighting came out?
Well,
in
you know,
the-
like everyone of course knows all the Bruce Lee films.
Bruce Lee, yeah.
But I mean, I get back to like the Jimmy Wang Yu movies, like the One-Armed Boxer and Master of the Flying Guillotine.
You know, the British were way ahead of us on that. They imported those films into the UK way before
What, in
we
the
did.
70s?
No, in the 70s. But I remember seeing the ninth re-release of Enter the Dragon, which always sold out. Always sold out of the theater I worked at.
which is to this day a great movie.
It's a great movie, but also Bruce Lee. People go, it's a great this action. Bruce Lee was also beyond stunningly gorgeous, and those abs and the sweat and that face of an angel.
Yeah.
It's like, who is that?
And almost-
I like kung fu now. More of him, please.
supernatural in his ability.
Yeah, yeah, and just
I'm glad you cleared that up
ridiculously pretty. Thank you. But Layla Schifrin's score.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Wait a minute,
sorry.
his son
That's
was-
50% of the success of that
Layla's
movie.
I'm with you on that one. That is a great
That's
score.
good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
Good.
It's not Ricky or whatever.
That's
his name is.
really.
And John Barry's score for Game of Death.
That's right.
too
John
shabby
Barry.
either.
That's true.
That's right.
But I mean, I got in there with like Five Fingers of Death and all those Bruce Lee movies, and then because he was gone, and now there was this hunger.
Yeah.
That all these other movies and these
Bruce Lee.
Yeah, well, all the Bruce Lee.
Bruce
Dragon Lee.
Yeah.
Dragon
But I
Lie.
remember, Jimmy Wang Yu, though, like his movies, he wasn't the greatest martial artist, but he was a pretty good filmmaker, and he would add these just fantastical elements. Like, he wouldn't just fight some guy who was a great martial artist. He'd fight two Tibetan monks who could inflate their body so you couldn't hit them, or a guy who could stretch out his arms like Mr. Fantastic.
right.
And
It was
Tarantino loved that.
yeah, I mean, I love that. And then the flying guillotine itself, which
Yeah.
is this.
Jimmy
I
hand that
remember
removes your head.
when I saw the poster for Master of the Flying Guillotine. I never saw the movie, but I said that's the fucking greatest poster you've ever seen. in your
Yes!
life. That is a great poster.
Talking about
Yeah.
exploitation posters, I never seen the film, but I always know that one film which is called Bruce Lee Fights from Beyond the Grave. And it's Bruce
As he
Lee
would.
springing out of a grave, like fighting like some kind of winged demon. And like he's not even in the movie.
It's, like Kung Fu Exorcist was one.
Yeah, yeah.
But my favorite one was Bruce Lee versus Gay Power.
I missed that one.
I don't know that one.
It was made in Brazil, and I finally found it.
Like,
It is
this 80s or-
ridiculous. Bruce Lee versus Gay Power.
Wow.
It's always been on those lists of tough. It was made in Brazil. It was part of that whole craze. Every country was getting in on the kung fu stuff.
Wow.
Bruce Lee versus Gay Power.
Where's-
I have
where's
it
the
somewhere.
two
And he
dissimilar-
is
Yeah.
fighting against gays?
Yeah, the Gay Power was this kind of drag queen kind of force of people who were trying to.
I've seen what that would be,
yeah,
yeah.
and so
Okay.
it was Bruce Lee versus Gay Power. It was,
Oh my
I got it.
gosh.
Oh,
Well, tell me.
We gotta find this
what
one,
is
Matt.
The whole number on Godzilla now. I mean, where are you guys? Are you?
Oh, you're talking to the right
yeah,
people
yeah.
Are
here.
are you all ready for what I've just seen the last trailer for?
but are we talking about exploitation?
Well,
are we
it is
talking
like-
about current movies?
well, no, I don't.
Well, we
even
can
know
talk
what
about-
Let's talk about exploitation.
Well, yeah,
Let's talk about I don't want to
to.
talk about current. I'll just
Well,
leave.
Godzilla's always exploitation, no matter how current
Exactly.
it is.
Yeah.
It's about a giant reptile.
Yeah. After the
What else
first
do we
one,
call
it
it?
was exploitation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of exploitation, and what
James.
James?
We have that problem too.
Yeah.
let me tell you something. If I saw a movie poster and I saw Pino Donaggio did the score, I give the movie a shot.
Oh, yeah.
Because Pino
Yeah.
Donaggio,
That's ages
it's one of the most incredible.
I mean, he elevates even Howling. You know, like it's fantastic
What's amazing
score.
about Piranha is that he
Piranha,
spotted it was 10,000 all in. So he spots the movie with Pino Donaggio by phone. Pino Donaggio does the whole score, sends the score to Joe Dante. They cut it into the movie, and Joe Dante doesn't hear Pino Donaggio's score till the mix, when they mix the final mix of that movie. But Pino Donaggio, when you saw his name on a movie, on a poster, it was like Tourist Trap. Can you think of any great score than
It
Tourist
really
Trap?
does give it a flavor.
Piranha.
that- yeah.
There have been a few clunkers, but then all the Brian De Palma movies.
Carrie,
were
Yeah.
Dress to Kill.
Just-
Blowout was amazing.
but all of them. I mean, but
there was
Carrie, oh my God, is that the greatest score?
Fantastic
Yeah,
score. yeah.
a low budget.
United Artists getting in the exploitation game. Carrie.
Yes. Oh,
I haven't seen that for ages on a big screen. I would love
It's
to see
incredible.
Me too.
Oh, it's
Me too.
Incredible
Yeah.
film.
it is like a perfect. That's a perfect exploitation movie.
It's a perfect teen
agree.
horror movie.
I
It
agree.
really
It's
is.
the perfect
Yeah.
teen horror
It
movie.
was
Scared the
perfect
hell
when
out
it
of
came
me.
out, remember?
I remember.
Yeah.
It still holds up.
And a very, very good adaptation of a Stephen King
and very
story.
well acted.
And launched
Yeah.
King's career, pretty
Right.
much.
yes.
Yeah,
He
matter of
likes
fact, they
it. He
spelled his
likes
name.
it.
They spelled his name wrong on the poster.
No, but he likes
Really?
it more than the signing.
Steven.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Stevie King.
Steve-O King.
Steve-O King.
But again, where is exploitation, over the years, and how you could spin a poster or a trailer or a tagline or a radio spot or all that stuff? How has exploitation changed? Is it social media? Is it now not special anymore?
It's become mainstream.
So have we become really like bitter to like, okay, we're being sold something. There's no reason to listen to it. There's
Right.
no reason to, there's no sort of like,
There's not- it's
you
not-
see a poster and go, I got to fucking see that movie.
Yeah, there's not as much of a sense of discovery. Seems
Yeah,
like.
there's
You
not
know?
those moments. There's not the poster moments anymore. But there
Well,
are the
posters
moments
all
of...
suck now.
Still a boutique market because I just did a thing for Arrow on Herschel Gordon Lewis, which is 22 discs, $350, It's Herschel Gordon Lewis's entire
Oh my gosh!
oeuvre.
Well, talk about exploitation.
And I did the narration.
One of the granddaddies.
I did two things. I did the narration for Color Me Blood Red and 2000 Maniacs.
Wow.
And
Those were not even movies; they were pure exploitation.
well, yeah,
They didn't even need to make the movie.
Yeah, it was almost a stage show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really
next
were
to
like.
Andy Milligan, who else represents that?
I'm glad you brought him up.
Yeah.
Andy Milligan is, if you have not read the amazing, I think it's the greatest biography ever written by anyone, and I'll tell you why.
Regarding show business.
Well, it's not even regarding to show business. There is no one else in the history of biography that has ever wiped the ass of the person that they are writing about. The gentleman,
Kitty Kelly, she does some great.
The gentleman who wrote the life story of Andy Mulligan stayed with him until his death of HIV, where, and I'll never forget this because I lost my partner to AIDS, is the same thing. All Andy had that remained of himself was his mustache, and when they shaved it off in the hospital, he lost his identity. And the one thing that he wanted continually until his death was ice water from the Bright Spot, a restaurant that still exists on Sunset Boulevard.
The autobiography is called
The Ghastly
The
One.
Ghastly One,
It's
The Sex
amazing.
Score Netherworld of Andy Milligan. And just to explain who, anybody know here?
yes.
To explain.
Well, you're talking
regional-
exploitation.
Yeah.
yeah,
You guys
that's
don't know
exactly.
who he
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Right.
No, he knows. He knows it. They just said that they know who he is.
Well, they better.
explained who it is.
The ghastly ones, corpse grinders.
No, that was Ted Michaels.
Ted
Michaels.
Right, that's right.
Bloodthirsty
Bloodthirsty
Butchers,
Butchers.
Flesh Pots of 42nd Street, Vapors. What else did he do?
The werewolves are coming.
Werewolves are coming. Rats are here.
Rats are here.
Werewolves are
Right.
here.
They're coming. The rats are here.
I mean, there's a whole
He would
bunch
do like
of them.
period pieces.
Period pieces because he was a costumer on off-Broadway shows, and so he could throw together a period dress for $1.97. But this biography, when you read it, you go, "Oh my God, you got to see these movies." But what's bizarre is a very famous director now, Nicholas Riffin, Winding Riffin, Nicholas, the director of Drive, the director of
Dion Demon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
He's a big fan of Andy Milligan,
Yes,
so he
he is.
found and bought a lot of the original negatives and
Oh, wow.
scanned them and through the British Film Institute because Andy had gone to England for a year to make a bunch of movies for a private cinema club out there that were a little sassy. Anyways, they remastered them and put them out on Blu-ray and everything, and they're just literally the worst movies ever made. But there's something about them that are so like seeds of sin. I mean, you get to watch these movies; it's unbelievable. But these films, again, were kind of like the Herschel Gordon Lewis movies that they were so hideously bad. But boy, a great poster, you can get a booking.
Yeah.
And I would say even like the Herschel Gordon Lewis movies that they were so obvious about what they were trying to do that they take on a certain charm.
Yeah.
You kind of warm up to them after a while. At least for me.
No shame.
Real like
Well, if you want to see
anomalies.
Brigadoon as a slasher film, then there's no better way to do it than watch 2000
right, 2000
Maniacs.
Yeah,
Maniacs.
no.
That is exactly
My favorite
what
one,
it is.
actually.
There's such a
Well,
weird.
no, I saw that at a drive-in. I was forced to see it because Blood Feast. I remember being taken to Blood Feast because the trailer had, and I'll never forget it. And I'll do the line for you now. Have you ever been to Egyptian feast? And so I love that. I love
Well,
it to
there's
this
such
day.
an anomaly, like that he was
And he
making
had
those kind
those
of
great
movies.
eyebrows, those Colin Farrell eyebrows.
Yeah.
2000 Maniacs to me is like my perfect nightmare. It's
Right
like
on.
already I'm in the South. And,
Yes.
and so it's already kind of bad.
Yeah.
And I'm going into some redneck town. And the minute the redneck wants to celebrate the tourists that come into town,
Right.
you know it's going to go
No,
badly.
listen, honey,
really
if you
badly.
feel that way, don't ever go into the South. Just stay where you are.
Thank you for-
do these
I'm happy when it doesn't result in
No,
2000
exactly.
Maniacs.
Best exploitation movie poster ever.
Yeah?
Any-
What do you got?
Any
Which one?
suggestions?
okay.
That's the
You like that
question.
one the best?
Yeah.
That was the question.
What do you think?
Wow.
Frogs is a good one.
That's a great one. Yeah, that's
because,
great.
because it's a lie.
Yeah,
Because
we were so
right.
disappointed.
Yeah, I wanted giant frogs.
Where was
flying
that?
in, yeah.
As a matter of fact, we were talking. We want that film made. You know,
The giant
I
frog
want the
movie.
giant frog movie with the hand
Food
sticking
of
out.
the gods.
No,
Because that's a rat that
That's a
never
good. That's a
comes
good
out.
poster, though.
It's a good
Yeah.
poster.
And I would for me, I would have to say the first one that comes to mind is Phantasm, because
Yeah.
that is like
good one.
offering you a Christmas meal of everything you love.
Right.
Yes.
Killer silver ball
Yeah.
and little murderous dwarves
Little
and
guy floating in
and
there.
then the tagline: "If this one doesn't
Great
scare you,
tagline.
you're already dead."
Right.
That's
Fantastic.
pretty good.
But also, it was the greatest trailer ever too,
Yes.
because it had
Yes.
like you go, what is this fucking?
Absolutely.
It's got everything.
Absolutely.
In it. I'm gonna go,
Well,
and of
you
course,
never know.
one of the most unique scores. Too.
Oh,
I love that
that-
score.
love that score.
I love that
Yeah.
score.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's Don Coscarelli, but it was by Fred Myro.
Fred Myra and
another guy.
Oh, right.
Well,
Yeah.
you know,
Beautiful score.
Another film that
Fantastic.
still holds up.
Absolutely.
I feel
They're
like.
just coming out
Yeah,
with a
the
2K
first
scan
one?
of that.
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
Yes,
well,
Yeah.
all right.
Very
You have
excited
an
about that.
opportunity to see, sadly, the very last one, which is like at Beyond Fest, where Angus Scrimm is like 90. And
Yeah.
Right,
It's
right.
called
Phantasm Ravager.
Reboot.
Ravager.
Well, you know who did the 2K scan on the original Phantasm was J.J. Abrams. Because JJ is a big fan of the movie,
Right.
and he kept telling his team at his office at Disney or wherever he is, "You got to see this movie." And then so they called Don Coscarelli. He says, "Well, I got a beat up print." And they go, "Do you have the negative?" And he goes, "Yeah." And they go, "Send it over."
That's
We
awesome.
scanned the whole negative for him. Wow. So, yeah, Don Coscarelli told me this at Flashback Week. And I said, that's pretty cool.
That's great.
Because that's a
What
great
does it
movie.
look
It's
like?
so
It's
good.
beautiful.
Yes.
Really
Talk
love
about
that
movie
movie.
where you
first
sit in like you don't know what you're gonna you
Yeah.
don't know what to expect.
I can see that
You're
again
like,
and again.
well,
Yeah.
It's, like,
me too.
it's pure
Well,
fun.
That's a
first one
fever
is a
dream.
good one.
That's
Yeah.
a fever dream.
Yeah, it's a Halloween
Very-
maze come to life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the
Yes.
scares
So-
and all this.
How many reboots did they do?
Well, they did like about
There's
four
four.
sequels.
There's
Actually.
at least four,
Yeah.
right?
Part 5
Yeah.
is just
And
the one
they
that's
did
coming
a
out.
fifth. They did one just before Angus died.
And so
Right.
that's one that's coming out,
Right.
or
It's called Phantasm Ravager. Is coming out in early October. Actually, it should be. I think it's going to be in limited theaters release, and then it's going to be like on demand.
Well, of course, it'd be limited.
yeah. But
My favorite,
Yeah,
my favorite exploitation poster is probably Romero's Dawn of the Dead, because as much as it's a classic now, it was pretty primitive for back then.
Right.
And just that box at the bottom that says
Yeah.
there is no graphic sex in this picture. However, no one due to the graphic
Yes,
violence.
yeah.
and
you
a
look at that.
tagline. That sometimes it's not even the artwork; it's those taglines that stick in your soul.
The greatest
now we
one,
take
the
for granted.
greatest
Yeah.
one was Deadly Blessing.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
It
I
had
remember
that
Deadly
chick
Blessing.
lying in bed with
Yeah.
something going in her mouth.
Right.
The spider.
Yeah,
The
that's
spider.
creepy.
Sharon Stone.
That
Yeah,
is
that's super
always-
creepy.
I'm telling
Yeah.
you, you can't equal somebody putting something in your mouth.
What was the tagline? What was the tagline for the
you're lucky.
the shaft goes to Africa?
Oh, the brother man's in the motherland and he's sticking it all the way in.
Nice.
Isn't that a great tagline?
That's a tagline.
Talk about exploitation.
You take that to New Ruthie's Nairobi Lounge.
I mean, that's amazing. We could go on
could go
and on and
but
on.
at some point we have
I just did the Boston Strangler today, and William Marshall showed up in a scene with Henry Fonda, and I had to stop and say, "It's Mama Waldy." I had to. I wouldn't be. You know, it's like in the middle of Member of the Wedding, which was totally intelligentsia thing. I said, "Well, you know, Arthur Franz was in Monster on the Campus." I had to. I had to. I wouldn't let it go.
and Troy
Well,
Donahue.
now this is a nice little segue
Yeah.
of like, now we would like you to have this opportunity to plug whatever you would like to plug.
Yes,
Would you like me to?
I
Would you
know-
like me to exploit the titles that I've got
Yeah,
right now?
Yes, please. 'cause I know
Exploit them again,
You've
or
been-
anything
you've been spirit
additional
of the
you want to
episode.
You've
bring
been
up.
working on a bunch of stuff, so we'd want to hear about
I'm working on a bunch of stuff, but I made a deal with Vinegar Syndrome
Oh,
to
love them.
release 3 titles that I directed and produced in the 80s, Nightmare
Awesome.
Sisters being one of them.
Nightmare Sisters, by the way, I just have to say that's the Holy Triumvirate.
Yeah.
Frank Stevens, Michelle Bauer,
We did it right after Sorority Babes.
and Lena Quigley. That movie has what must be the longest 3-girl bathtub scene I've ever seen, and it's.
I just like to thank you, if I could.
It's the Citizen Kane of 3-girl bubble bath
Yeah,
scenes.
if you could give us an address where to
And
send
just as
flowers,
good as Citizen Kane.
candy.
Thank you. No, that was a movie we made as a goof. We had 17,000 feet of film left over from a movie. We had a house. We had the 3 girls. We
That's
had
awesome.
some insurance, and I said, $50 a day, crew, come on in, and we all made that movie.
And tell the premise of it because the premise is pretty funny.
well, 3 very nerdy sorority girls.
Very kind of ugly, plain-looking girls.
But
played by-
ugly, like in a TV series where the librarian is ugly, but then she takes off her glasses
and
Exactly.
she's hot
Shannon
now.
Tweed, yeah.
Exactly.
So that's kind of when they are in a sorority and they have a seance and they turn into super sex vixens.
Right. It can happen.
Yeah.
It happens.
Based on true
We
story.
believe.
And I went all out on that one. There's a lot of full frontal, and it was the
yeah.
80s.
Bless you.
So that one's coming out because we shot that in 35 millimeter with the cut negative, so you can actually scan the original negative, so it'll never look better.
Awesome.
And Vinegar Syndrome did an amazing restoration of it because those guys over there are really terrific.
Yeah, really cool. They're putting out some really obscure stuff.
Great stuff. And another film I did with Linnea, this is kind of a Linnea Quigley 3-pack, Murder Weapon with her and Lyle Waggoner. Wow. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And that one is, that tagline is, sex isn't their only weapon. Anyways. Okay, sure.
We'll go with that.
We'll go with that. Because they were like together. Anyways. And then another one called Deadly Embrace with Linnea Quigley, Jan Michael Vincent.
Really?
And when you think of erotic thriller, how could he not think of Jack Carter? So
It's got everything.
and that one is
Erotic thrillers.
that one's an over-the-top raunchy, lot of simulated sex and everything. So that's the 3-pack. It's all from original negative, scanned and completely restored and color corrected. So those are coming out next month. I've got the 4 titles I mentioned: Evil Exhumed and Asian Ghost Story and Sorority Slaughterhouse and Teen Warlock, all coming out on demand on all the platforms. Also, a couple of companies acquired the VHS rights to these particular films. So some of the older ones are coming out on VHS. So if you go to cinemahomevideo.com, which is my old VHS label back then, it'll take you right to those titles because there's still a vintage VHS
There is.
collector fan base
People
out
are
there.
still into it.
Yeah.
And what else? I'm just had lunch with Charles Band today to talk about the sequel to Sorority Babes. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about
Tell
that.
him to call us, by the way.
Yes, you'll probably be on the set after your session. We'll probably let you guys down. Doing a lot of movies that have been airing on Lifetime, like The Wrong Roommate, The Wrong Child. Vivica A. Fox is my producing partner on a bunch of movies.
Nice.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, so she's great. She's a hoot. We've just done 3 movies together. We're doing another one next week. And so I've got a Christmas... We've got a Christmas movie coming out.
The ones that you just mentioned seem like Christmas movies to me.
Right.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, the Christmas
It's
for us.
a winter morning. But no, I did. Speaking of exploitation, I did a Christmas movie. I'll end on this. I did a Christmas movie a couple of years ago where it was just a G-rated Christmas movie about a family and people getting together and wishing they remember their wishes when they were little
Goodwill
kids.
towards men, peace and
Exactly. So I said, now, who is the most successful independent producer working now that Dino De Laurentiis is no longer with us? Who is the? And I thought, it's Avi Lerner, the producer
Right,
of Expendables.
sure.
I go,
Oh,
he's
yeah,
probably
yeah.
the most successful independent. I mean, consistently. And how would he cast a Christmas movie? He'd cast it like the Expendables. So I did this Christmas movie, and I cast Christopher Mitchum, Gary Daniels, Cynthia Rothrock, Kathy Long, Daniel Bernhardt, and a few other people. Oh, and do you remember back in the days, remember an actor named Nick Adams that was in all those Japanese movies?
Oh my God! Are you kidding?
Yes.
His grandson's in the movie. Wow. And so it's called Santa's Summer House. And I shot it in 3 days, and I invited them. I said, because I met these people, and they're really nice, but every time they do a movie, they're always bad guys, and they're kicking ass. I go,
Right.
But they're all funny and sweet and really nice people. I
Right.
go, come to Malibu with me for 3 days. No kicking, no sores, no pads. No, you're just do Christmas, and we'll have a good time. And they go, okay. And they said, the money you're paying, David, we're not going to be kicking each other's ass. You're going to get me walking from left to right and talking. That's all you're going to get from me at that price. And so it's a cute little movie. It turned out really, really great. I'm really proud of it. But that's true exploitation.
right.
When you cast a Christmas movie like Avi Lerner would cast The Expendables, that's exploitation. So anyways, it's been a great night. Thanks for inviting me down. I hope we stayed on topic enough because...
No, it's great.
We
It's
always
fantastic.
go on.
Topic a couple of times.
we only went out to this one without topic.
Because I was just here as a kind of sidekick to this mogul, this kind of mogul.
Definitely come, if you're in Toronto, come to Horror-Rama Canada in Toronto in October. Check out my movies on the the on-demand sites, and my
Absolutely.
website is rapidheart.com. And
Cool.
thanks for inviting me to
my God.
Monster Party.
Yeah.
What a party!
Yeah. Hey.
I love Monster Party. We got to do this again.
I feel monstrous,
Yeah.
don't you?
And David, what do you got?
Yeah, is there
I have
anything,
not-
David,
well,
is there anything
do you
you're working
really
on,
want?
David?
I'll tell you what I have.
You know,
baby.
make it quick.
Well,
yeah.
all right. I'm going to be very subversive and overthrow the American government and move to Canada with
Phew,
David.
thank you.
And I'm going to do that right away. But no, I have.
hero.
I'm doing a book on canon films. I
Awesome.
just did the introduction for a book on Dracula's daughter for Gary Don Rhodes, who is the
Great.
ultimate Lugosi. I've done 15 audio commentaries in the last 2 days.
Wow. Some of the titles?
One of which, I did The Boston Strangler, Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte,
Nice.
Chamber of Horrors, The Invisible Ghost with Bela
Nice. That's
Lugosi.
the Kino release, I think.
They're all for Kino Lover.
Blood.
Theater Blood for Twilight Time.
Oh, I love
I
Theater
just
Blood.
did also The Barefoot Contessa with Ava Gardner. The
Dr.
Detective,
Goldfoot.
the Dr. Goldfoot and the Gold. Dr. Goldfoot, two Dr. Goldfoots with David DeCoteau.
Sure.
I also did Comedy of Terrors with David DeCoteau. I also did the Count Yorga collection with Courtney Joyner. I also did Frightmare with David DeCoteau for Vinegar Syndrome. I also did it's endless.
I'm going to be hearing a lot of
I
you.
work every day, and
Thank you,
I
sir.
enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And David DeCoteau is my best friend.
And
this is awesome.
and David Del Valle is my best friend.
So together we have just a mess.
So a total mess. Anyway,
Well, thank you guys. This has
Yes, this has
been
been awesome.
great.
A true party.
Hope
it has
you,
been a true monster party.
hope you come
Boom,
back.
like
Yeah, please come back anytime.
Yeah. And time for a listener shout out.
Shout out! Who do we got, buddy?
This goes out to Patrick Moody from Connecticut.
Patrick Moody.
Hi, Patrick.
Patrick.
Patrick is a breaker of chains and father of dragons, according to his profile.
Wow.
Wow.
And he's also a writer. He's the author of a book called The Gravedigger's Son, which is
Sweet.
available from Sky Horse Publishing.
Okay.
Nice.
And I think Patrick has, as a more recent listener, he's been commenting that he's checked out some of the titles that we've mentioned on recent shows, in particular some Japanese titles. That
Yes.
I love that.
good
Patrick,
man.
he has to
Love
listen
that.
to all of them, though.
Well, I'm sure he's catching up if he hasn't already.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, we are thrilled to have you as a listener. Thank you for your support, and we're glad you're enjoying our suggestions.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, Patrick. Thank you for listening.
And he also mentioned that our Japan video, now on YouTube, was pure joy.
Cool.
and pure genius, I might add.
Well, those weren't his words, but yes, I agree with you.
And it
No,
was,
and
it was
I mean-
pure joy for us to experience it.
You know, and for our listeners, yeah, you've got to check this out on YouTube because it's loads of fun. It's heartwarming.
Yes,
it's
our
just
magical.
Japan trip.
magical. Yes, Sean.
Magical. Yes, our Japan video is up on YouTube now on our YouTube channel, Monster Party TV.
And once again, we must warn you, don't turn this into a drinking game where every time someone says magic, you drink,
It's magical.
because it'll take you to a magical death place.
Yes, because we say it so many times.
What else, buddy? What else do you got there?
And we also got to do a shout out for our friend Alex Callan.
Alex Callan.
Oh man, this guy works with us at Playboy, and he is an amazing filmmaker.
He is, yeah.
In fact, he has a short film that's going to be in Screamfest 2016.
It was accepted into
accepted
Screamfest,
into
yes.
it October 22nd at 6 p.m. It's called Blood Trail. You have to check this out. There's a trailer on YouTube. Look it up.
Yeah.
And you can follow him and the film on Twitter at Blood Trail Film.
Cool.
And to follow up, Matt, I just want to say I want to give a shout out to a good friend of ours, Raquel Pomplin, Playmate of the Year.
God,
Yes,
Playmate of the Year.
Well, here's the funny thing. She was on our show a while ago
Yes.
with Steve
A delight.
Walsh. Yeah, it was
On our
it was-
Backwoods Psychos.
Backwoods
Backwoods
Psychos.
Psychos.
And the thing I loved is she and I were talking. She says, Larry, I love listening to your show because, she doesn't see the kinds of movies that we
Yeah, she's not a
love.
big horror fan.
No, but she loves listening to us because she feels like, oh my gosh, she gets informed and she loves hearing us.
And we're lovable.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, and we have magical shows.
We do, yeah.
Magical shows. So
Yeah.
Raquel Pomplin, I just want to say thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
listening,
Raquel.
and
Yeah.
we hope you enjoy listening to our podcast.
We love you.
Yeah, we do love you.
And I got to do one more shout out.
One more shout out.
Wow.
For, get this, my brother-in-law.
What?
Josh Mitchell.
Josh Mitchell.
Josh Mitchell has been a fan of this show for a while. I
Yeah.
mean, he listens to every episode. He loves them. He's always commenting on them. He's lovely, and he is an amazing musician.
And he listens to them more than once.
Oh yeah, no, he's into us.
Yeah.
And he has a new CD.
Okay.
He has a new, well, I guess it's, we would call it an EP. The band is called Lost July, and you can find this EP. It's called, I guess it would be, this is in Roman numerals. So this one, I guess it would be 23, XX33.
Right.
I don't know what the kids are naming their rock and roll these days.
What is he,
but
like-
that's what he's called it.
Okay.
And you can go to lostjulymusic.com and you can find this EP. You can go to iTunes or Amazon and you can get a CD or a download. Once again, I don't know how the kids are sharing their music.
Yeah.
Besides the way James does, which is he steals it.
Ixnay. Feds are cracking down.
Yeah. But Josh, we love you. You know I love you. And please check out his music. He's great.
And Josh, thanks for listening, man.
Yeah, Josh.
Appreciate it.
Well, let's also remind our listeners that you can find us on social media, Facebook, Monster Party TV, YouTube, also Monster Party TV. On Twitter, we are at Monster Party HQ, and our Instagram handle is also Monster Party HQ. And we are now also on Google Play Music for those of
Google
you
Play Music.
who have the Androids.
Yes.
The Androids.
We're everywhere.
If you're listening,
We're on Androids?
we have
Yes.
they're Androids.
Yeah. They're taking over.
Yeah. Oh my God! They're taking over.
Talking about mic drop.
A mic just dropped out of its stand on its own.
Wow.
I say it and it happens. Wow.
Also, a reminder that our the Monster Party cap is available for sale on eBay.
It's still
Yes.
available.
still available.
There's only 125 of them left.
But these are good, high
They're
quality
great.
caps.
Yeah.
Quality caps.
I mean, you look at them, the stitching in this, it's like
Look,
17,000
let's
stitches.
just forget about being a fan of us or anything like that. If you need a hat,
If it's raining,
you can use a hat, right? What if it rains? Exactly.
It's utilitarian.
What if you got a bald spot?
But you know, these hats are great. They're very classy. They're comfortable.
Classy.
They breathe.
they're magical.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're perfect
Yeah.
for formal events.
and we'll throw in some fan extras.
Yeah. You never know what you'll get.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a Monster Party fan. I like it.
And you've been listening to Monster Party, a presentation of the Fangoria Podcast Network. It's produced by Matt Weinhold and executive produced by Thomas DeFeo and Ken Hanley of Fangoria Entertainment. For press opportunities, advertising inquiries, and information about Monster Party, contact Ken at fangoria.com.
On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I am Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
Watch exploitation films.
and David DeCOTEAU films.
All 130 of them.
Yes.
Because he's making more of them.
You know, there's a lot of people out there that I meet and say, "Hey, Larry." This is stupid.
Let's start again.
I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, stop for a second.
And I'm going to say something. Okay.
God,
Sheridan. Okay.
you ever been on a set before?
And that-
Settle?
and-
Anytime now.
Oh my God! I got a shot of Sheridan.
You got a Shawn Sheridan in your throat.
Hey.
All right. Okay. All right.
Okay,
One
here we
more
go,
time.
here we go.
It'll be very easy.
Okay. Yeah, that was very funny, Sean. Okay, here we go.
That was a real noise for me.
That was.
You hear that?
Yeah, I did. Shit comes out of his mouth every once
I
in a while.
know. It was like the sound that a frog would make if it had a hand coming out of it.
Yes, it would, just like frogs. Okay, here we go.
On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I am Shawn Sheridan.
I am Larry Stroth.
And I am James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
Watch exploitation films.
and David DeCOTEAU.
Sean.
Let's start again.
I love
again.
you, Sean.
Am I going to say?
God.
Am I going to say all 130? You're going to
No, no, I'll do that.
No, you're going to say see Courtney Joyner. No, that's right. You can't
if
say
only
that.
he knew that that's how now Sean preps for the show. He just keeps saying his name over and over again.
Our strange name.
She sells seashells. See Courtney Joyner.
All right.